and go. This Sunday was a Kaiser day, but we blew up a pool, like we have a large blow up pool outside.
Who did?
And I put it on the porch.
Yeah.
And I filled it up and it was literally 100 degrees outside and the pool warmed up and it was so warm. So the kids had lots of fun.
Oh, good.
But it's letting the air out somewhere. So this morning I look at it and like half of it is like escaping. So we're gonna have to find the hole.
stripes or in mud?
No,
Okay.
the one that was in the paper
Good,
today.
good morning, everyone.
When somebody leans back and just
keeps going.
We're ready to go. So,
yeah, there I am. Look there.
okay. So good morning, everyone. It's July 17, 2023. We are here for our 9 a.m. strategic planning meeting. Let the record reflect that all 5 commissioners are present and our executive management team. And we have a busy day, so we're going to start off as Randy Bischoff.
All right, thank you, commissioners. We're going to start off today, talk a little bit about budget, but first we're going to get into the June sales tax report. So we'll let Jason talk about that. You have that, there you go. Thank you.
Perfect. The next slide. June sales tax was definitely better than May's sales tax, so that was nice. I mean, not fantastic, but I didn't get nearly as nervous this time about talking in front of you guys. So that's right. Yeah, hopefully next month's even better. So for June, about 6.1 million, which is pretty much even with last year's June. So that's pretty good. And year to date, we're 2% over where we were for 22. So, which isn't too bad.
So it's still a little bit off of what our budget was, because we had budgeted closer to 3.9. So we're still a little bit off, but like Jason said, at least the shrinkage was getting less this last time. So that was good news.
Yes. Can we go to the next slide? Okay. So we have the figures on top, which I won't go into because they're kind of hard to see, but where we're at for the year, right, for the roughly 36 million. So if we trend how we're trending now at the 2.1% year over year growth, will be about $1 million under budget. Still, which obviously under budget's not great, but it's not too far off. If we trend how we did last month, which is about negative 0.2%, we'll be about 2 million under budget from the budgeted 78.5. And I didn't put this on the slides because it was kind of hard to reduce to writing, but typically for the first 6 months, we collect about 46% of our sales tax collections. So if we looked at that and then pushed it forward for the rest of the year, we'd only be off by like less than 0.1% for our budgeted amount. So that would be pretty good. So, do the next slide. And again, that just shows the breakout per category, whether it's for regular sales tax, criminal justice, juvenile jail, or public safety. If we go to the next slide. And then for the economic indicators, can you zoom in, please? Residential construction, year to date is up just a little bit. Obviously, for the month you see in the red, that wasn't a strong month. But year to date, up 3%. For non-residential construction, year to date, up just about 4%. So relatively flat over last year. And next slide. New car dealers last month was pretty good. Year to date, just 3%. And kind of following the same trends as everything else. Used vehicle sales are down for the month, 9%. Year to date, 8%. And that's a trend that we're seeing like everywhere across the country is kind of showing like the same sort of.
Despite all your efforts, Josh, I mean, what the heck?
Mine will show up next month.
Yeah.
I'm doing my part. You guys will all just
You bought a Ford, that's why.
On the next slide, the next category, you'll see a pretty big spike in auto repair and maintenance. So whoever repaired the car 2 months ago, that definitely helped. A big part of that is like nationally is wages for people that are doing auto repairs have gone up a lot. So the cost for auto services has jumped up about 25% year over year. So that's a big part. People are holding on to their cars longer. So people are spending more money on those.
And typically, as you start going into recessionary times, people will repair versus buy new. So again, even though it's positive that it's going up, it's a negative from a standpoint of looking into the future.
Again, other motor vehicle dealers, still down significantly. Right? And that does include boats. Commissioner French asked that last time.
Yeah,
So, yeah, it definitely does include boats, so.
reflection of discretionary dollars available to
Right,
buy the boat and the RV.
And a lot of people bought those in the past few years, and you're not gonna turn those over that many times, so.
But if you had 20 on here, 2020 on here, it would be the highest for RV sales were insane.
right.
But they got them parked because the price of gas is so high.
Go to the next slide. And same thing, pretty flat for full service restaurants. Same thing with the limited service restaurants. Almost exactly on trend for both of them, so nothing unusual.
I would say we are probably anticipating a little bit of spike in these two areas because we did have, so next month's numbers will include the Bloomsday Run, which was back in swing full time. The month after that will include Food Fest.
Yeah.
So both of those were very well attended, so we are expecting to see a little increase in these two areas in the next couple of months.
The next slide. Retail trade home centers, obviously you see a lot of red on that. That's not doing as well. Those are like the big box. Lowe's, Best Buy, Home Depot, things like that. Accommodation and food services. This should see a pretty good bump over the next 2 months, as Randy was saying, because of the big events that we had that were really well attended. So it looks pretty flat right now. And then the next slide. And again, so the top 3 economic sectors, this comprises about 70% of all of our sales tax revenue, retail trade being the largest. So you can see that pretty flat. We're just barely below where we were for 22 year to date. Construction year to date just barely above at the 6%. And accommodation and food services, can you scroll down just a little bit? Sorry.
Good increase.
Up 9% year over year, so.
But that trend that will affect us in terms of property taxes and stuff not this year, but the following year, because general construction dollars are down from last year.
Correct. Talking with Tom earlier this year and last year, we added $1.6 billion to our rolls. This year will probably be down to about $1 billion. And so following year, you're probably going to be under $1 billion for the first time in a while.
And that is it. So a little bit better than last month.
Next slide. For 6 months, it's an eye test. You probably want to look on your computers. So the first one talks about our revenue. We are at 46.4% of our budgeted revenue for the first 6 months of 2023. For 2022, that compared to 49.4%. We're down in a couple of areas. One is sales tax, which we've been talking about, and the other is fines and penalties. Our property tax penalties have dropped, $600,000 over where they were last year at this time. So people, I'm not sure if they're, I didn't talk to Mike, but if people have probably paid their taxes or more current maybe, but our penalties did drop $600,000, which is the difference in that area. But otherwise, all the other areas seem to be on track. Again, sales tax is going to be the biggest one that will impact us. As far as expenses on the next slide, we're a little bit under where we were last year. We've only spent 43.5 or 43% instead of 46% of our dollars. We do know that we do spend more in the second half, especially with overtime, things like that. So I'd say right now we are optimistic that we will definitely be within our budget. I think the only difference between budget will be more on the revenue side than the expense side.
And as a note on the agency breakdown here, if any departments look a little scary, farther over the 50% than we would anticipate, we will be addressing a portion of that with the budget amendment that'll be final August 8th to spread out the salary and wage budget for the contract implementation. So once that's final, then those budgets will be realigned a little bit better.
Any questions on those areas?
So
Mr. Malcolm.
just to clarify then, so we moved the money, we voted to take that out of the unallocated, but it hasn't actually been placed in all of those departmental budgets yet?
That vote hasn't been, that vote will be final August 8th at the public hearing.
At which time, then we will.
Then
Then we
you'll
will
go.
do all that movement.
Oh, you guys have so much fun ahead of you. Okay, great. Thank you.
And that was for all the contract changes
Right.
that we did not have in their budgets last year. And so, yeah,
that'll-
so
you'll see-
so if you see them at 52% now, they're probably really at 48% or something like that. And that does take care of most of those things. Any other questions on these two pages? All right. So then we can go into a little bit more preliminary budget talks here and some direction as we start getting things for you to think about. The first one is going to be the commissioners' budgets. I don't think that one's on there.
We don't have any attachments or pictures
Right.
for this one.
So this is more just conversation. So in the past 2 years, the commissioners, each of your budgets have had $13,000 in your budgets. In 2021, it was 12,600. 22 and 23, it's 13,000. So that's going to cover your travel, any business cards you buy, any Zoom accounts, things like that. So really the things for you guys to think about is, are we going to leave that flat again for 24? I guess my thought is you probably are going to start there anyway because we're telling the other departments, excuse me, to keep M&O flat. But again, that's something for you guys to think about as we come back to you in August and start putting the full budget together. But I guess my initial thought is we're going to probably leave that flat, but that would be something if you guys want to say differently, let me know. So where you're at.
Randy, where have we been trending?
For the most part, we're trending about right on 13,000 right now. So we're trending pretty close to spending everything. I mean, the general paper that you buy, that's in Gina's budget, which is last year was 22,200. So like copier paper, just the standard pens we buy, we run that out of Gina's budget. This, the Zoom account for the main board, we run out of that, so.
Yeah, and I probably do, in addition to Commissioner Cooney, the greatest amount of traveling because of LSC. And I try and match my travel for LSC with my travel on my other state boards so that the other state boards pay for that. And then that way I kind of use their money to do that. That doesn't always work out and stuff. And so I've had a conversation with Andy that the LSC I do on behalf of the board, not on behalf of me. And that shouldn't come out of my travel budget. That should come out of the board's travel budget. But I don't think I'm exceeding yet, but I'm getting real close.
And we don't have a board travel budget, so
Right.
that's.
Yeah, so in the future, we might want to think about establishing a board travel budget, things that, we do on behalf of the board as opposed to things we do for our office and stuff. So that would be something that we probably should consider for future.
Well, like next year will be a short session for LSC.
Yeah, so, yeah, that'll be helpful. The number of meetings that I have for the state boards will be the same. So, there's six of the LSC meetings I should be able to get the other boards to pay for, but there will be a couple that are not paid for by other boards. So.
Okay, anything else? So we can take a look at that and put something out there that we can fill in later. The next one then is we wanted to.
Sorry, Randy, I'd say it'd be great for us to see what, if you could do a print out for each of
Yes.
us for our departments.
I will.
Just so we can see. what-
I'll send that out to you
Little
later this
detail.
week.
Just to know.
I'll send that out later this week. I've got it through May. I'll just do June.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the only ones that I've done that I've been, because of my office, has been the Olympia trip and the DC trip. That's the only two that, everything else has been paid for by other boards or committees.
Yeah, and most of my WASAC stuff is paid
Paid for by WASAC,
by
yeah.
WASAC, so. And then, like my civic leader trips, I actually paid for my own airfare and just have the, whatever the hotel is, so I kind of split that with the county.
Well, also keep in mind, Olympia and DC trips, we get, a couple of those are free as well. So it's not the full price either, so.
Yes.
And if
yeah,
only 3 of us go, then
Right,
they're covered.
Yeah.
So.
mhm.
Just the airfare, right? Because does GSI doesn't cover the airfare?
No, we
right?
would cover airfare.
I think looking at where it is now and then understanding what is taken out, because I think I was told it was just travel. But you're saying there's other little things that come out, like the
They just
Zoom
have one
account.
budget line called travel, but
Okay,
for example, Josh has a MailChimp. So, that fee comes, we just have a budget number in there of 13,000,
okay.
but it includes those things. If you're gonna do a special mailing or something like that, I would hit your budget, not Gina's budget, because it's
Right.
not, things like that. So as, and postage went up again, so, we know that's gonna be more expensive also. Any other questions on that? Otherwise, we can start talking about outside agencies. Okay, next slide, Ron. Caught up here, go back down here. So these are the outside agencies from last year. We've got a lot of blanks filled in here. We've only filled in the ones that are required. For example, the TB. Easy.
Tuberculosis.
There he goes. So tuberculosis is required by state statutes at $290,000, so we've got that budget for next year. But again, the health department, the general support, that is up to the commissioners. That is not set by statute, so we've left that blank. Last year you did give them $2 million. And I believe you went to their budget and whatever, I don't know how that worked. My understanding is they asked for a amount to balance their budget, and that's where you guys came in on. So I don't know what you're thinking about this year. But last year you did $2 million. Also, WASAC have not filled in what their numbers are going to be for next year. Mary, do you have any?
We are gonna be
Ideas?
we start the discussions at our board retreat, which is a couple of weeks.
Okay.
And then the
So
executive committee kind of, we're looking at all that right now.
Okay.
And we'll have some direction that we'll be taking to the board in September.
Okay.
So until September, it will be an increase.
Okay.
Just because the west side is experiencing more of a cost of living than we are.
So maybe in August, though, you could give us some percentages, maybe fill in to start the discussion.
Mid-August.
Mid-August, perfect.
Because we have our retreat here, I'm hosting.
Well, they're coming here.
They are,
Yeah.
Convenient.
The big one is in November too.
right, and that's here. So everyone arrives the night of the 8th and we're here till the 11th,
Perfect.
so.
Mid-August, yeah.
Mid-August.
After your discussions, we can at least put in some preliminary numbers then based upon that. Yeah. And which ones we're doing are we, because we didn't do the solid waste assessment last year, so you know all the assessments then too. I'm assuming
Or if
from
there's other
that.
special interest groups that are a conversation for next year.
Right, well, and part of why they separate that out instead of just one lump sum is that way then it can come out of those funds and not all out of the general fund. So that was, I think, several years ago, as the general funds were having a strain. They were able to identify which ones could be assessed through different, enterprise funds or special revenue funds. So that's why they're broken out separately like that. Mr. French?
Yes.
So the number you had there for Clean Air Agency, is that a number you got from them? 'Cause that's high.
That was I believe that was the assessment that was that we got the letter from them. And it was quite an increase, from 22 into 23. I do
I
recall
knew there
that.
was an increase because we had lost some of our grant funding from the feds, but so we ended up having to reapportion that out to all the cities. And then SRTC is also up there.
That is one that the roads fund pays for.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, very good, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I skipped over the Clean Air one there.
That's kind of hidden.
So Al, you'd be the best one to give us a update on what
Yeah.
they're looking at for
Yeah,
assessment.
yeah, we're just finalizing our budget now, so I should have a good hard number for you.
After Wasack is gonna be the children's waiting room. That is
That's the care room run by the Vanessa Behan Center now, out of the basement of the Broadway Center building. For people that are here visiting the courthouse campus, they can have their kids there, so they're not in the courtroom with them or doing other business here.
and this is the same amount we've done for the last few years, is 83,000. I guess unless we hear otherwise, we'll just stick the same amount in there.
Will you be talking to Vanessa Behan to see what the,
We will follow up with them to let, yes. Waco. That one we filled in
It's down in Texas.
sometimes. Was that a contract?
This is not a contract. This is one that it does seem to increase every year. Scott had us do some looking into kind of how the fee's assessed, why we pay it, just kind of to gain some information. And it's one of those unique agencies that it's like it exists and we must be a part of it. And it's more focused on all of our other elected officials than it is the commissioners. So it's much more of a resource for assessor, auditor, clerk, treasurer, things like that.
so is there a reason why we don't allocate it out to each of their budgets?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking too. Why would
Yeah,
we make
why
a
would
direct
we be paying
payment?
for them?
Why wouldn't?
Never thought of it that way.
I mean, and I'm just gonna use an example, like for
Great question.
Encourage you to
Superior-
think of it that way.
because for Superior Court, there's different associations and groups
Yeah.
that they belong, and they have a budget line
Yeah.
in the Superior Court budget that they use to pay for whatever subscriptions or memberships they want. Why wouldn't, I mean, it just seems like this should be
Yeah.
kind of the same thing.
We will work on that.
Yeah, or even if it's just a straight
Sure.
simple
Straight one.
percentage, but
Yeah, straight allocation.
cause we don't attend Waco or
We don't even get any communication from them. I don't even think I get Waco emails, so
it's a joint, the building that we have, Wasack's building is jointly with Waco. And so I get to have meetings every now and then with Waco on building costs. But yeah, that's the only interaction that we really have with Waco is that, cause it's the separate electeds.
It is pronounced Waco, not Wacko.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
The next one is going to be our consulting with MJB. That is in the final year, 2024 is the final year of that contract.
Right, 4 or 25.
From my
It may
last
go
year.
next year.
I was thinking it was next year was up, but this would be also if we were to do another contract with what Mary brought up on as far as getting, monies in, hiring an outside consultant, to get more money in on, grants and things like that, we would put that entity in this same area. So Mike is fixed, but if we do wanna add another one, we would put that in here as well.
I don't know, Jeff's on, because we were gonna put out an RFP just to see what services are out there and what costs would be. Jeff, are you unmuted now?
Yeah, I'm working with Tony on getting that RFP going. It should be before you at your next meeting after recess.
Okay, thank you.
The next one is the Chase Youth Commission. You've given them $37,000 for the last few years. Any changes there in discussion?
I think they usually send us sort of a request of how much they're looking for, and yeah, I think it's always been right there since I've been here.
Yeah, my last meeting with them didn't indicate that they were looking for an increase, but that was a couple months ago, so things are dynamic.
Head Start to Construction, we gave them $25,000.
I'd be willing to give them more if they could utilize it. If they could expand that program. So I mean, I don't know if anybody wants to reach out to them and ask if they have the capacity to go bigger. I think, I want to say 2-3 years ago, we had said, if we give you more money, could you scale up the program? And they, at the time, I think they were limited with sort of their workforce in order to expand, but that seems like a very good program. And if they could scale it up and get more people through their program, I think it'd definitely be worth more putting additional funds to it.
Isn't it kind of a partnership now between AGC and home builders, or they were doing
Still-
something?
they're
That's
still
different.
separate
That's a different one.
programs.
Okay, all right,
Yeah, they're still separate programs.
okay.
So, yeah, we would just need to talk to Mike, because I think partly hasn't been sure, what the process is and all of that. So I think we can talk to Mike Ankeny at AGC. And I'll reach out to him as well, but it's better for you guys to reach out
We'll
to him.
talk to Mike then.
And Brenda has the contact information.
Perfect.
And I agree with Commissioner Kearns. I'd support more money for that program. It's been a really good program.
Yeah, Chris, are you aware of it?
Actually, they have a graduation ceremony coming up later this week.
Later this
I don't know if you
week.
got that email, but
I'll double check.
you may want to try to attend. It's like 3 blocks down. You watch it, and they explain the whole program. It's pretty cool.
The judges are probably the biggest supporters of it. And law enforcement. It's a great program. Usually they try to do, with COVID, it was a little harder, try to do some of the cohorts out of Geiger. But they're working with people in the community that have been justice involved, as well as low income, and just it's a 6 or 8 week program now. I can't think of it.
I thought it was 6. but-
6. That is, working with individuals to get them the basic construction skills. But they also look at the whole wellness of the person. So they'll help get them IDs and just driver's license and all those things that they need too. And then a lot of them have jobs coming out of it because they get their flagging card, they get their OSHA requirements out of the way. And so a lot of that happens there.
It's ringing a bell now.
Yeah, it's one
Mike's
of our,
mentioned it.
it's a very successful program.
Yeah.
That one along with breaking barriers.
Yeah, the recidivism rates, I mean, I remember going out to Geiger the first time, it's like, yeah, people they would normally see back, they would see back.
Aging and long-term care of Eastern Washington, right?
Yes.
All these new acronyms, so, 24,000. Is that just an every year?
It is an assessment, our assessment used to be higher, and then, you commissioners worked to help get the city of Spokane Valley established, so,
Good Lord.
they now are assessed a fee. And so yeah, I think 2023 was around 24,000. Who's on that board? You're on that board? Okay. So if you get any insight into what kind of a cost increase we're looking at for that group, that would be really helpful for us to know.
I don't think it's ever been more than like 1 or 2,000.
Yeah, it's
increase,
not much.
But
Go ahead.
NACO, we assume just a small increase. And then just Randy wants everything rounded this year. So we rounded.
I don't like pennies and dollars. And I don't pretend to know that much.
So $10,000 is our good guess.
Okay, I'll see, cause that's where I go next week, or this week. This week, the national conference, so
Awesome.
I'll see at the board, kind of what's going on for dues, so.
Awesome.
And I would probably just move that up under WASAC, cause it's kind of, the two really go together on that list, just. They're, basically the same organization.
And then we have some kind of other community groups and events that have been sponsored throughout the years. Priority Spokane via the Anovia Foundation, Unity in the Community. We've sponsored the bike swap, different things like that. Usually between all those different events, it's about $11,000 of budget for those different groups.
More or less,
Other
same
groups?
ones,
Kind of the same.
things you can think about, so when we get back together in August, September, we can finalize those lists.
I think the Priority Spokane, what it does, it gives us 2 seats on their board, so it's like $2,500 each, so.
It's more of a membership than
Membership,
a
okay.
contribution.
We'll note that.
And then down into the economic development area, the first 3 lines there are our PDAs. West Plains and Northeast, we have estimates for what we believe our sales tax impact could look like. We will continue to fine tune those as we get more information from the PDAs and continue to work with them on what they think their 24-year will look like. And then the University District PDA is a flat fee that we pay. And then we have GSI. We have 2 lines there, general program support, and then the Advantage Spokane website. I know Jeff worked on that contract. And I think the funding level changed a little bit on the Advantage Spokane website. I think it was a little less this year.
Typically, it's been 25, so.
yeah, I think we bought in at 25. I think it might have been at 17 the prior year, and now it's down to 13. So
Cause I think that was the development period,
Yeah.
and we're past the development of it, and then it's kind of that maintenance.
yeah, and I think the maintenance and keeping our specific page up to date, I think is sort of on us, on the county to do that. And I don't know, I'll have to check. I don't know how up to date we're keeping it, especially since Jared has left. I don't know how up to date we're keeping that page.
Has anybody heard what the exhibit is going to be now for the MAC this year?
Yes,
This coming
we
year?
just paid the bill, and it is Minecraft exhibit. My grandkids are very excited.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, we're not sure if they have an ask for 2024, if they have a large exhibit that needs to come. I know they're usually planning that far in advance.
They also received a significant ARP contribution, just FYI, the MAC did.
That was for their DreamWorks one that they
Right,
had, which was a massive show.
The way things fell, it ended up being more general with COVID, moving stuff around, the timelines. That was the original intent. but it ended up slightly different, just the realities of COVID. But that was 300,000 that they received of ARP funds.
So is someone gonna reach out to see if they have an exhibit in the need for the 25 for 24?
We can reach out and ask.
Yeah.
They usually contact us, that's the thing, but
Yeah.
I think with the Minecraft not starting until September, usually they start kind of in the late winter, kind of early spring, but with this one starting in the fall, it's kind of shifted.
Betsy
So,
didn't mention anything when we met with her.
no. And those who maybe don't know, Betsy Godlewski retired.
Yeah, she's retired. I was just gonna say,
So
she's
not
gone
with
now.
it, and she's usually been our go-between with the organization, but we can reach out to Wes and see if they have something planned for 24 and if they think they'll be coming and making an ask, but with this one not starting till September, I think it takes them into 24, so I honestly
This one
don't
goes to
know.
the December 31st is when this one.
Oh, is that all? Oh, it just takes it to the end of the year, okay, so yeah, so I don't know if they have a big 24 exhibit on the hook yet or not. We'll find out.
Sometimes it's like every other year they've been doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just depends.
So, yeah.
What they get.
With Betsy leaving now, does that mean our contribution goes to 5,000 then? Is that what that, no?
It's all contingent on if they need it, so.
Yeah, just saying.
If they don't have a big exhibit, then there's nothing to donate to, so, or to support, so.
And then we have chamber dues. We increased those going into 2023, I believe, or 22. And so if any of the chambers have any changes or anything,
Or if we need to be in others, just let us know.
We always need more, but we've kind of capped it at that.
Can somebody reach out to Ignite Northwest? Cause I think it was 2 years ago, they came in and we were sponsoring a specific thing, like it was a specific, I wanna say like a series of presentations.
Yes.
But then for 23, I don't think we initially had them in the 23 budget, and then they might have shown up real late in the budget process, or maybe even after we adopted the budget, and we're like, hey, how do we get in the budget? And it was really late, so we just may wanna reach out to them earlier than we did last year and just make sure, are we sponsoring this specific thing? Is there something that the county is gonna sort of be the title sponsor or whatever, so. And just for some reason, I thought last year they came real late in the game,
And budget cuts, I mean, do we
and
need to?
that's
do
another
it?
thing to consider
Is
too.
that one that we only did it for 2 years, and is
Yeah.
that something we need to continue to do, or
Continue
is,
to do.
Yeah,
or is that
so,
something that?
so I think either way, good to contact them early, so we have all the information, making those decisions.
All right, this next thing, I just want to go through a couple special revenue funds, just kind of let you know where revenue's going on them. I know we're running short on time, so we'll kind of breeze through this. More of a touch, just to let you know what we're looking at, and as we get into decisions down the road. So the tourism promotion area, this is your hotel, motel, TPA board makes recommendations to the board. They will then bring that to you. You can say yes, no, or make changes. Revenue on that, I don't know, gut feel says it might be a little bit higher than what we've got showing here. In 21, we had 4.5 million, and in 22, we had almost 6. So as
And then
rooms.
going into 23.
Oh, that's right, we split up the
We
valley.
lost the valley.
We lost the valley, that's right, so never mind. I already asked this question
I was
once,
hoping.
wrote
I
the
know.
notes
I
down.
think there might be some missing revenue.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's
so yeah, the
wrong.
valley split off and took their portion of the funds, and then we reestablished with the city of Spokane.
So
for the
4.1
remaining
is where we will probably be for next year then. Tessa told me that, I even had my notes and didn't read them, how about that? Teamwork.
Exactly.
This. Mr. French.
Are we anticipating any changes associated with new leadership with either Visit Spokane or Spokane Sports? Both of them got, I mean, you know, Eric is gone and Meg is gone, so you sit on Visit Spokane, or
Yeah.
actually associated with both of them.
So I have not heard any talks about changing the split, the 72-28.
Right.
I mean, it's been about that, I think the entire time I've been a commissioner. I think it's maybe moved 1% or 2% is all. But I've heard no discussion on changing that.
Okay.
So, yeah. And part of it is, you know, the sports commission, they do their thing, but Visit Spokane, you know, when they're promoting people to come at the same time, it's come and watch some of these sporting. So they're kind of working, I mean, they do work in conjunction with each other. So I've never seen a real battle to adjust those percentage points very much, so.
I didn't know with the podium now, you know, in full swing, and then with the new stadium that's coming online here in a month or two, you know, whether that would increase the need for promotion dollars. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I haven't heard any
Okay.
discussion about changing the percentages. So.
Okay.
Next one is just gonna be the hotel motel tax. Again, this is for tourism marketing. Looking at about $500,000 probably coming in next year. We do have some expenditures that are already set against this, which is the debt on the existing concessions. But the rest of that can be used for other marketing items, so. You've got that one, yeah, Mary.
Those are pretty specific as to what they can be used for.
Yep.
So,
Car rental tax, this is requiring constructing, maintaining, operating public sports stadium facilities, youth and amateur sports. This one here, we're looking at about probably $800,000 of revenue next year is what our projection is. In 21, we had 722, 783. So car rentals are still going strong, especially, you know, now that we've had Bloomsday, Hoop Fest, things like that. So we don't anticipate this going down right now in 24. So these are, again, this is some areas you've spent money in the past. In the past, you did give money to the Spokane Sports Commission, which that is not under contract anymore. Is that correct?
Correct, that contract ends at the end of this year, so we would need to work on a renewal with them if that was the board's wish. And it was a flat fee with a minimal escalator, it went up a couple thousand at certain years or something. That was a several-year contract. So that expires the end of this year. And then the two M&O items support general fund operations at Avista Stadium and Plants Ferry. And so we'll be working with Doug's team to get some additional insight into those and clarify those budget numbers as we proceed.
Also, the Hub Sports is on there only because we've given them money in the past. We did not budget any money for them in 23, so we left the line on there for 24, not knowing if they were going to have an ask or anything like that.
and what the hub tends to do is like it's in every other year for resurfacing, like we help with one of their courts, not all of them, but helping resurface the gym floor. So I would talk to Phil because we'll probably want to put that back in since it's a valid use. Scott, you have
Yeah, I think the last time we did it was 22.
Yes.
I don't remember the amount, 15 to 25, I think it's closer to the 15 range.
I thought it was 17 sticks in my
It
head
might
for
be,
some
yeah.
reason, and
I couldn't remember if it was every 2 years or 3 years, but it's somewhere.
I think it was every other year.
Every year.
you may have skipped one year during COVID because there was less use of them. Maybe that might have thrown it off. Yeah, and so I think there was 1 year they took off, but yeah, I think it had been every other year. So, if that Avista Stadium one goes down, I assume that is field maintenance, would be a part of that number, that M&O. So
That is-
when the new stadium's built in a couple years, that'll free up that special tax. I think asking Doug where are the needs as far as youth sports. So,
And as the commissioner can see, depending on what you want to do with the Spokane Sports Commission, based on the projected increase in 2024, does leave some capacity to make some decisions on investing in other areas.
Commissioner French.
Well, and I've been getting a lot of feedback over the last couple of weeks with regard to Plants Ferry. Evidently soccer and everything like that is just tearing the fields apart, is what I'm told. Now, I haven't been out there and I don't know firsthand, but from what I understand, it's really getting a ton of use. Well, when we were up at the Northeast Youth, Marcus Riccelli had just come from Plants Ferry and was commenting on it. So we might end up having to put some more money into Plants Ferry just to restore the fields.
But we have a lot of ARP dollars that
Yeah.
are going towards Plants Ferry.
Yep.
So,
So you'll see Doug's been working on some conceptual opportunities out there with synthetic fields, with lighting, that he'll be bringing to the board in the coming months ahead to share more about what that master planning looks like out there. That's what the opportunities are.
Riccelli asked when we were gonna go to synthetic fields, and I said, when we get money from the state.
So remind me how decisions are made about the retail car rental tax? Are those in conjunction with the city, or does that all go through the county?
All counties, all
Okay.
commissioners.
this is only the county portion.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay. So all these numbers here just show the county portion? Like the hotel motel tax, I know there's an advisory committee.
Yeah, so the TPA is, and I always have to refresh my memory on this, because it's now City of Spokane and county, they go to a lodging tax advisory board. They make recommendations. I believe they're the ones that have made the recommendations for the split between Visit Spokane and Spokane Sports, and the VOCC takes action on that. And then 50,000 is held as a specific grant opportunity that VOCC again makes.
Okay.
They bring some recommendations forward, the VOCC makes a decision on those.
And the city does not receive any of the TPA funds, that all comes to the county and then we administer them on behalf of the regional board that makes recommendations to you all.
There's four hotels that are actually in the county, 4 or 5. The rest of them are all city hotels.
and I believe that advisory group, the 3 voting members are 2 City of Spokane hoteliers and 1 county hotelier.
Okay.
So it is, but yeah, they're the
So
ones.
they make recommendations back to us.
Yep.
But the retail car rental tax, that's all VOCC decision.
And the hotel motel tax.
Do we have a process by which they submit proposals for the funds?
In the past, as I recollect, it's been fairly committed to Avista Stadium, Plants Ferry, and Spokane Sports Commission, so there haven't been any
Then the
excess
hub
dollars.
off and on,
Yep.
do some maintenance?
Yep.
Okay.
So not any specific process per se. This year with the additional projected revenues, there's an opportunity to evaluate how you want to evaluate other investments that these dollars could be used for.
And then I guess on the sports commission, I mean, they would probably need to come and present as to what the need is.
And they've asked because they knew their contract was expiring. We knew that we'd be presenting some budget information to the board, so I think it's a nice next step to have them come in and present kind of how they use the dollars in the past, what would be the outcomes, benefits to continue to use it, what is their ask going forward.
So probably in the strategic planning meeting.
And the last 3 funds we'll just kind of preface here today are gonna have decreasing revenues because they're all based on either the number of recordings or the amount of REIT that we're receiving. Knowing that doing a lot less recordings these days, we're down, we're probably down about 60% right by now. So the Historical Preservation Fund is going to be getting less money. Just for comparison, in 24, we're estimating 70,000. In 21, that was 153,000. This is money that the commissioners could use for preservation of historical documents or historical preservation programs. We currently give $40,000 to the city of Spokane every year to their historical preservation. We've also used the money in the past, like on the courthouse, if you've had to fix fascia or whatever in the courthouse.
Getting a pressure washing or a seal coat, things like that.
Yeah, so we've got at least we have some fund balance here. We can continue those things. We've got enough money to continue paying the Spokane Historic Preservation Fund, but anything else, if there's something came up, if you'll need something for the courthouse to make it, fix the outsides.
The
falling
gargoyles.
down, yes. You've got some money in here that you can use that with. The next two, REIT 1, REIT 2.
And there's no time limit, we can keep
Right.
that
Yes.
for the time that we need it.
Yep.
Okay.
REIT 1,
$40,000
again,
we paid to the department for the city
Right,
for them to administer the program for us.
right, okay.
Through an ILA.
REIT 1, we're gonna budget next year just over 3.1 million. In 21, that was a $5 million of revenue. In 22 is 4.5. This is really dropping off. But we're going back to what we historically see. I mean, 21 and 22 were unprecedented times with all the refis and everything else. So you're just, all the purchases, how homes moving quickly, homes prices increase. Right now, we have 1.8 million of debt that is committed against this every year. We have done our schedule. It goes out to 20, the longest one. Yeah, 42.
Yeah, 42, because 20-year debt started last year for the small arms range.
So this debt but this does give you about 1.3 million a year of new things we can do with REIT 1, plus we have 6 or almost 7 million in fund balance that we could do. So as we start looking at capital projects, of course, this is where you will have some of that money that you can use. REIT 2 is much more restricted on the next page. Again, that revenue is the same as REIT 1, and it's following the same trends.
Say something.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when we get into the 6-year capital process, 6-year CIP, that's where the commissioners will have an opportunity to see what are coming in as requests from departments, where might we be able to fund them, how might we be able to use REIT for funding those investments. What's the process we followed in the past.
So on REIT 1, what was the Liberty Lake parking lot in 2023?
That is for Liberty Lake Regional Park,
Okay.
fixing that parking lot with the updated master plan.
Should have known that. Thank you.
And that is the last of the funds we are going to talk about today. There are a couple of other things I want to let you know about before our time ends, and that's in regard to funds. A couple of upcoming fund changes that we will be bringing to you, or we can talk about. One is the law library, based upon a opinion from the Attorney General. The law library should be under the general or the county umbrella. We will be setting that up as a special revenue fund because the RCWs do say how they get their revenue, and their board says how they will spend it and hires the librarian and everything. They had previously been an agency fund, but when the board held a meeting a couple weeks ago, Mary, and based upon that opinion, the judges did agree that it shouldn't be out here as an agency fund. It should be a special revenue fund under the umbrella of the general fund. And so we will be bringing a resolution to you to create that fund. That fund we will set it up for an October 1st start date, which will bring the law librarian in as an employee of the county, and will make that much cleaner for us and for them. The other,
So it was, basically it was like a special purpose district, so we were still doing all the accounting and all of that, and realizing that, yes, this opinion was out there that we did not know, or I don't know if people knew in the past, but anyway, it was time to clean it up and just bring it in as a special revenue fund, so it's still accounted for separately and all of that. It's not looking for general fund or dollars or any of that.
The other change that we would like to bring to the commissioners would be to split building and planning. Building is a enterprise fund. Its fees are set and it is meant to be self-sustaining. Planning is a government service that is required to be paid for by the county general fund. There's long-range planning, there's current planning, and there is code enforcement. Code enforcement and long-range planning really don't have revenue streams, and they are a cost that the county gives to building and planning every year. The one that does have a revenue stream is current planning, and that should be used to offset the cost of those other two departments. Hasn't been done that way in the past. Our recommendation is to bring a truly general fund where we even record the expense anyway in the general fund, put it back in the general fund, because its expenses can't be offset by planning revenue. So they really should be separate. The counties in the state, some do it the way we're doing it, and some do it the way we're proposing to do it. But our recommendation is to split those. We do have directors for both departments. When this was combined back in 2000, I want to say 3, it was because you were trying to go to one director. It used to be separate prior to that. I think for the correct way of doing it, I think it should be separated, but that's one of the things we'd like to bring to you, so.
And one of the benefits too is the administrative costs. Right now, we're capturing the cost correctly. We're doing an allocation out to the general fund, but it's just extra steps that Randy and Tessa have to go through to do those journal entries and everything. So by just leaving it there in the general fund, I think it just reduces some of the additional steps that have to be taken to move those dollars around.
We also think that it'll help provide some additional insight for the board and for us as, into what planning does versus what building does. Right now it can get kind of confusing. They think that they have these large cash balances. Well, those are buildings cash balances that need to be dealt with for building fees and things like that cannot be used by planning for anything. And so we think that if making this shift will help us get a much cleaner picture of what it costs the county to run the long-range planning and code enforcement functions.
And we have a minute left, but that's all we had for today's presentation.
Any other questions? Lots of information for us to think about, so you'll be bringing some of this back to us.
Yep, we will.
As we start talking
Multiple
about budgets.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, that's gonna take us to George. Switcheroo of the chairs.
Well, thanks for having me. I just sent you all a copy of the presentation that I'm giving here today. Ron has it projected up as well. Before I start, last week I said no problem, I'll have the numbers for you, easy. I had to rely on Tessa for a lot of numbers, so I'm super grateful for Tessa and just want to make that known as part of this presentation. So what I'm bringing to you is just kind of a general overview of the Housing and Community Development Department budget. We've got several different fund sources that come into this department for a variety of different activities. So the first thing that I want to do is just kind of go over that. So we have the budget that's called the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and an important note on all of these fund sources. They're all related to Spokane County. So the city of Spokane receives a lot of these funds as well. Today, I'm just talking about Spokane County. So our first budget within Housing and Community Development is the Housing Trust Fund, not to be confused with the federal or state Housing Trust Fund. This includes document recording fees, commonly referred to as the 2060 state law there. And then the affordable housing sales tax, so recently passed 1406. The next budget is our Housing and Community Development Fund, and this includes those federal entitlement projects that you're used to, or fund sources that you're used to seeing come through, including CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, as well as HOME. And then new in this program year, federal program year, is the Emergency Solutions Grant, or ESG. This will be the first year that the county has received ESG funds. And then our third budget is the Homeless Housing Assistance Fund. And this includes our document recording fees that are specific to homeless programming. And then it includes our Washington State Department of Commerce Consolidated Homeless Grant. Next slide, Ron.
Yeah, you can go. No, you can go first.
On the ESG funds, I know that there's a metric for community development, block grant and home. What's the metric to determine what your, how much the ESG funds are going to come to the county? Is it population? Is it low income? Is it, whatever? What is the metric?
All of the above.
All of the above.
So
Sure
yeah,
is.
it's a federal formula. So
Is it the same formula as block grant?
no, it's a little different. But primarily it's population based. So the reason that we got it for the first time this year is Spokane County population wise, for the first time went over the minimum threshold, if you will, for those funds.
Okay, thank you.
You have on there the 1406, and you said recently passed. So what exactly is? I've heard of the 1590, which is sales tax for affordable housing. I'm not familiar with 1406.
Yeah, and I'll get into that as I go
okay.
through the slides, but
Okay.
1406, that's the one that the state put together. That was the counties and cities had an option to opt in. So I believe that the commissioners passed that as a resolution, maybe in 2020. I have the exact resolution in the presentation.
No, we
I
didn't.
don't think we did.
Yeah, no, we didn't opt in on that.
This was a different.
Oh
It's
wait,
not-
that's the
this
one
was
the
the
state collects it
tax
and
credit.
they leave it. So it gets
Right.
charged either
Okay.
way.
You're right.
They either leave it with
Yes,
that's
yeah,
the 14.
yeah.
The 1590 was the
New
one
sale.
that we could add that we opted to not.
This is a
Right.
portion of the
This-
states that
Yeah.
that we
That's
didn't
right.
have
States
come to
comes
us.
back.
Now,
Okay.
now I remember. it.
Yeah,
Alright.
yeah,
Okay.
you're right.
Yep.
We'll get there.
I keep all these numbers straight.
I know. So what I wanted to do is there's just kind of a general overview of the different revenue sources that come in our budgets within housing and community development. So I wanted to give you just kind of big picture of what this department's total revenue sources look like. So effectively in 2021, the department administered, and this is excluding, really important to know, excluding all of the COVID specific money that came in through Treasury and Commerce, et cetera. So just looking at our non-COVID monies here, the department was at $8.7 million in 2021. 2022 is at 7.8, and then we're forecasting, at least in a couple of our budget line items, about $8.3 million. You'll see a significant increase on the Homeless Housing Assistance Fund, and a lot of that has to do with the Washington State Department of Commerce's Consolidated Homeless Grant. So they added some additional funds in this biennium, and then for the document recording fees and sales and use tax, I've done some estimating kind of what that looks like, and I'll show you that kind of at the end of the presentation. So but just wanted to give you kind of a general overview before I get into the itemized budgets.
And I guess I just want to make sure this, and maybe you said this and I apologize, this also includes the city of the Valley. So this is everything outside the city of Spokane.
That's
Because the city of the Valley chose to stay with us instead of getting their own entitlement.
correct.
And so as we look to these funds, it's for the county as well as the city of Spokane Valley.
In all three categories?
All three categories at this time.
'Cause
The,
doesn't the city of the Valley get those $1406 directly?
they do right now, and they're also looking at possibly passing a resolution to get their portion of the document recording fees for homeless services. So that's something that their city council is looking at right now.
Okay, so their 1406 funds are not reflected in these graphs then? Perfect. Got it. This is everything that flows through the county.
Okay, next slide, Ron. So the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, this is related to a couple of different fund sources. The first one being what those that have been around for a while know is 2060. Otherwise, it's a document recording fee that's been set aside specifically for affordable housing development. So we've got the RCW listed up there. Eligible use activities include acquisition, construction, rehab, building operation maintenance, rental assistance, and emergency shelter operating costs. Primarily, the intent of this, as you can see up there, is to benefit individuals earning less than 50% of the area median income. The next revenue source coming through is the affordable housing sales tax. So this is that 1406. So there's the resolution that the Board of County Commissioners passed. That was at the end of 2020. So this is that portion of local sales tax that allows to come back into the county for specifically doing affordable housing type activities. So our bullet points show that we can do, again, acquisition, rehab, construction, funding for operation and maintenance, as well as the potential of rental assistance. Next slide, Ron. So here's what that looks like. This is, because these are sales and use tax, I took last year as just kind of our baseline. So last year for our recording fees, the Affordable Housing Program, were $2060. You can see that our total revenue there was approximately, it was $609,000. And then our affordable housing sales tax, the 1406, that was $937,000. So the document recording fees last year were not significantly impact, not to the level that we're seeing so far in the first half of this calendar year. And then the sales tax was off just a little bit from the year prior. Next slide. So I wanted to provide examples because a lot of this conversation is coming from the regional homeless conversation. And so I wanted to show you all as commissioners, and hopefully you'll recognize that your district is listed there for these different projects. So this is just kind of an example of the reach that we have throughout the county. The first one being Highland Village. So that's an affordable housing development out in Airway Heights. This has been ongoing for a few years. It's really a great partnership between the city of Airway Heights, Community Frameworks, as well as Habitat for Humanity. So this is a $2 million investment that we've made through these funds to promote that affordable housing development. The next one is Pinecrest Senior Housing. So this is acquisition and rehab of 24 units of affordable housing, specifically for seniors up in Deer Park. And then Miraboo Townhomes. Anyone that's driven along 90 and seen all that rock work going on off Pines, that's this. So it's kind of exciting to be a part of something that significant. And our investment as far as the overall total development cost, you can just imagine how much that rock's costing to move. We're in that $850,000. And again, in the city of Spokane Valley. So those are just some examples of some of the investments that we've done for consideration. Next slide, Ron. So the next one's the Housing Community Development Fund. So that was the first fund that we have within our department. So of the 3 funds, we covered one. Now the second one is the Housing Community Development Fund. And this includes those kind of core HUD entitlement programs of CDBG, home, and ESG. Some of the different funding activities that we can do with these, with Community Development Block Grant Program, public services. So that's really helping to support some of our nonprofit organizations with their maintenance operations, etc. We have our capital improvements and acquisitions. We can use CDBG funds to help out with those types of activities. Public facilities, which includes our infrastructure work that we do in our small towns, and then economic development. Home primarily is our new construction of affordable housing. That's one distinction between Community Development Block Grant Program is a really popular program because it can do just about anything, with the exception of developing new units. We can acquire, rehab, but we can't build new from scratch with CDBG. We can do that in home. Home has some technical difficulties associated with it. One of which is a 20-year affordability period that makes it really difficult to pencil something for 20 years. So it's something that we're really trying to find ways to better utilize home program funds, make it attractive for developers. I think that by looking at that, the previous fund, our Affordable Housing Trust Fund with the county, I think that we've got an opportunity to really kind of help leverage and make home more attractive. And then the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. And this really is primarily targeted at homeless shelter operations and rapid rehousing. Next slide. So here's an example of what that looks like. So for Community Development Block Grant Program, important note here, I'm talking about program year 2023 for these funds. So this is the program year that just started the first of this month. So $1.6 million in Community Development Block Grant Program, $947,000 for home, and then you'll see the Emergency Solutions Grant Program has a pretty small slice there at $146,000. Next slide. So here's some additional examples of how we're using. In this one, I've got all CDBG funds. So we've got Cheney Outreach Center, so helping to support some of the operations to make sure that resource out in Cheney is open and available. You'll see the different funding totals for these different projects. We've got investments into Spokane Valley Partners to make sure that we've got services that are being provided to our constituents in the valley. SNAP Essential Home Repairs, this is a county-wide program to be able to provide existing homeowners with rehab type activities to ensure that they're still able to stay in their home, stay where they are, where they're in stable, affordable housing. SNAP Financial Access, this is an economic development program to help with kickstarting microenterprise businesses, so generally less than 5 employees at start. Park Road Sidewalk Improvements, this is out in the city of the Valley. This is really trying to help make some improvements around, I believe it's Centennial Middle School out there, making sure that kids have a safe way to get to and from school. The town of Fairfield, a sewer project out there to make sure that those citizens are up to date with their existing infrastructure needs. Cheney, a water main, again, addressing some of those just basic infrastructure needs within the community. And then Greater Spokane County Meals on Wheels, making sure that our seniors have access to all the services that Spokane can, or that Meals on Wheels provides.
Yeah, so on the Park Road sidewalk improvements, those kind of improvements or complete street improvements and things like that, those are all eligible projects for TIB funding. And so with what we do and what we can get from TIB, we might be able to do larger projects or more complete projects and stuff. And so whoever's working on those kind of projects, if they could get a hold of me, I can give you, because I sit on that board, give you maybe some insights in terms of how we can get some more money to come to the county on projects like that with a priority around schools and public facilities and stuff like that. So this would be a great project for that.
Yeah, great feedback.
And also the safe routes to schools.
Yeah.
Funds through the state. I mean, maybe those funds are part of this project and this is just a portion.
Yeah, it's a significant project, so I don't know what all has gone into
This
that
could just
capital
be
snack.
like a third of the.
Safe routes to school are pretty competitive. We've gone after several in my district for said that you know, roads department thought were excellent candidates and they don't finish in the money. So I mean, those dollars are pretty competitive, so.
But if this area qualified for CDBG, it might be a more competitive area. So anyway, but yes, it is. Everyone wants the safe routes to school.
Any other questions before we go into the next fund? Okay. Ron. So the next one is the Homeless Housing Assistance Fund. So this fund includes our what's known as the 2163 funds. So this is the document recording fees for homeless specific activities. So some of the eligible uses there are to operate and repair homeless shelters, transitional housing facilities, and then rental assistance. The next one is the Consolidated Homeless Grant. So this is specifically coming from the Washington State Department of Commerce. This is actually a portion of those fees that they retain that they then redistribute throughout the state. And so some of the different eligible uses that they have here are emergency shelters, transitional housing, homeless prevention, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and then street outreach. Next slide. And you can see here the difference between the two different fund sources. Again, looking at program year 2022, or sorry, program year 2022 here. So for the homeless housing funds, those document recording fees, those are really significant in 2022. We're seeing that taper off now as we are in 2023. And then CHG, the Consolidated Homeless Grant, at $1.5 million. This represents half of the total biennium investment that Commerce makes in this grant to the county. I suspect in 2023 that pie will look opposite, where we'll have a more significant portion of it be Consolidated Homeless Grant and less of it be the document recording fees specifically for homelessness. Next slide.
And why do you think that?
Sorry, say again.
Why do you think that again? It's gonna look the opposite.
I think, yeah, just the downturn in some of the home transactions.
But we're not gonna see the CHG increase. It's just that we're gonna see a decrease in the housing.
We will see an increase in CHG. Yeah, a significant one. So the Department of Commerce, they included, I think they called it the Eviction Prevention Fund this year into the Consolidated Homeless Grant. So that's a significant investment that they're making. It's kind of, as I understand it, helping to taper off some of the rental assistance that's been provided the last couple of years.
Okay, from the, okay,
Yeah, through the different rental assistance programs.
thank you.
I think that they were working on the eviction prevention program prior to the pandemic. And then anyway, it's not a huge amount of money.
It's pretty significant. When I'm done, I can show, or I can just share some of that information as well. So some examples of projects that we funded with these dollars are the YWCA. They're victims of domestic violence shelter, their operations there. Catholic Charities, their rapid rehousing for homeless families. SNAP, their homeless outreach team. Spokane Valley Partners for homeless outreach. Volunteers of America, we've invested significantly with their young adult shelter as well as the Hope House operations costs. And then lastly, the Way Out Shelter, the county made a commitment in partnership with the City of Spokane to ensure that that had operation funds. I believe it was for five total years. Yep.
Three on that.
I think we're in the
Next slide. So next I want to just talk about kind of the sustainability of our local fund sources. So a large portion of our portfolio is coming through document recording fees as well as sales and use tax. So just a few things I think most folks are aware of, but important to point out as well, that the revenue is tied to the housing market for those document recording fees. We had very good years in 20 through 22, in 23. Well, at the tail end of 22, of course, there was a taper off. And then that's continuing into this calendar year. The sales and use tax revenue is tied to taxable goods. That's tailed off a little bit, but not at the same level that the document recording fees have. So what I have on the next slide, Ron, is just kind of a look at these different revenue sources and kind of what we're looking at in 2023. So what I've done is I've taken kind of where we're at through this year to date, and just kind of forecasted what that looks like. So you can see with our 1406, so that's our sales and use tax, it's coming down a little bit from its high in 21, but not significantly. Whereas when you look at 2163, which is the homeless specific document recording fees, that's coming down significantly. And then the 2060, which is the affordable housing document recording fees, that's coming down, not as significant as the 2163, but it's on the decline as well. So when we start thinking about our future investments over the next couple of years, what we had in 20, 21, 22, versus what we may have in the next couple of years, will look a little different than it has.
The 23 number, that's a projection based on where we're at so far. Okay. Yep, thank you.
Yeah, so for the sales and use tax, I took the high of 21 and then 22, and I just kind of found an average in there to say this seems like a conservative estimate of about where we'll land on those revenues. And then for the document recording fees, I believe we had those through the end of May. Tessa would know better than me, but it was pretty good estimate there.
One of the things, I think Randy, correct me if I'm wrong, but document recording fees used to be $100 a couple years ago, and now it's $300. So not only are we seeing slowdown in some of the housing transactions, which influences recording fees, but then there's the question of, are people choosing not to record documents they had in the past because of the expense? So that's a couple things that are informing on where the forecast is on the recording fees, the softness that's occurring there.
So George, when you laid out the total amount of revenue for all three of those kind of pots, what portion of that do we spend on just our staffing and administration costs?
Yeah, great question. CDBG is the outlier. So CDBG allows for up to 20% on admin costs. This year, we're certainly going to be off on a lot of those numbers, just with some staffing struggles that we're having. But generally, I would say it's right around 10%, even with that 20% for CDBG funds.
So of the 8 million that you're projecting in 2023, about 10% of that is spent on staffing and administrative costs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Estimate.
Yeah.
you wanna touch quickly on the Spokane Valley, what they may be looking at doing differently with HHA?
Yeah, so one of the things that's great with the HHAA is it's a document recording fee, so you know exactly where those documents are being recorded from. So the City of the Valley is interested as they build out their homeless service infrastructure. They're looking at passing a resolution that will allow them to retain their portion as recorded within their jurisdiction. So very similar to what the City of Spokane did, I think in 2011, sometime around there. So that will, if they choose to go that route, that will have a decrease, but it will also have an increase in services out in the valley. So one of the things that we've said with the valley is if they elect to go that route, we would prefer that they take the entirety of it. There's no admin fees or anything kept off that they just administer that program in its entirety.
And about how much is that?
I don't know right now. I think probably around 40% of that is probably a reasonable guess.
And then that one has the lowest program expenses you can take on it, right? Is that the 6%?
No, I think I'd have to look at it.
Okay.
So the goal was to provide you all with hopefully a high enough level overview that it's understandable. I know that there's been some questions about what revenue sources come through the department, how it's being distributed, et cetera. So my hope is that provided a bit of an overview there. Is there anything more that you all would like to see out of the department to help with that transparency?
I'll just say this is probably the best presentation on where your department's revenue goes that I've ever received as a commissioner. I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you, what you do is very confusing to me, I think to a lot of us. This was a great presentation to break down where these funds went. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. And I know it's confusing, there's a lot of tentacles to it, but I don't want it to be confusing. I want to make sure that it's open and transparent for you all, so that when you talk to constituents, whether it's just a resident or if it's one of our service providers, I want you all to feel like you're empowered to have those conversations.
I'm sure you said this verbally, but just a reminder, what is the source of the homeless housing and assistance fund? Because that's the single largest fund, right?
These two, the recording fees, and then a portion of the sales tax from the state. Correct. These two sources.
So slide 11 gives that kind of detailed breakdown.
So can you say it one more time what the source is?
Yeah, so
I'm a little slow on Monday morning.
no problem. So it's a
Or copy.
it's the surcharge of local homeless housing fees. So surcharge of any, if I buy a house, I'm going to get a document recording fee, and a portion of that will go specifically to homeless services. Okay. The other portion of those funds goes back to the state, that then gets reallocated out into the state through the Consolidated Homeless Grant Program.
That's the commerce.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So questions I have, George, like as we look at staffing, we look at this potential new model. So I kind of want to get an understanding of your staffing and what that looks like. And then I want to see, so now based on these numbers, if, you know, of the 8 million total, 8.3 million total, what would you see as eligible to go there? I mean, I know all of it's eligible, but reality of what we're already doing versus what would be part of this new entity. I'm just curious as to what you see as what some of those dollar amounts, because again, in our current ILA, the draft says all. And so, but that's, I don't, you know, again, I know like on CDBG, you know, I've got these little communities that rely on those funds as well. So I'm just kind of trying to figure out what that might look like?
I think that's similar to you all. It's difficult to say at this point because we don't really have enough understanding of exactly how the regional homeless entity would be divided out. So would they have a housing entity, a homeless specific entity, so on and so forth, those larger issues that they'd like to tackle, housing, homeless, health, and public safety. I think a couple of these funds would certainly go under the housing arm of that. And then the remainder of them would go under that homeless portion that they're looking at. But until we have more clarity of kind of how that looks, because I think that's one thing that's causing some of the concern in the community around, gosh, if you're saying CDBG, then does that mean that we're no longer able to do that Fairfield sewer main, et cetera? So difficult to say without some of the additional details.
So then talk about your staffing. Like, how many staff do you actually have? I mean, I apologize that I don't know those numbers, but I don't.
It's fine, and I've got numbers that you all can leave this meeting with in your mind without having to do too much math. Right now we have 4 staff in our department, counting myself. Next Monday we'll have 3 staff in the department, counting myself. We're in the middle of a recruitment right now for folks to come in and fill the vacancy that will open next Monday. And we're actually having some great recruitment success already on that. I got from HR through the NeoGov system on Friday 8 candidates. So and looked through them and had some great folks. I've also been meeting with Eastern Washington's urban planning program. I'm an alumni of that program as well as the public administration program. So trying to find ways to help attract some of that young talent, retain them here in our community, and then also put them to work with us. So I've been working with HR to look at some different strategies, some different ways to be able to attract and retain employees. I think ideally we have a staff of 6, counting myself. I think that that's reasonable given our portfolio that we're managing. But really kind of taking a look at that. One thing that's incredibly important to me is that we have data, and not just that we're putting data in front of you and saying you interpret it, but that we're actually analyzing the results of our different programs and what we're funding, and then we're providing like reports as needed to you all that's showing where those trends are. We're like, I want to be able to say we funded this initiative, and 6 months later here's what came of that, as a way of measuring and gauging how successful we are in these different investments that we're making. So one of the staff positions that I'm looking to hire will be kind of our data analyst, specifically around homelessness. Taking a look at that, really utilizing the homeless management information system as a way to say, not just that we have a tool that captures data, but that we're utilizing that tool to present to you all kind of where we're at. So looking at some different ways to ensure increased transparency in the work that we're doing with you all.
Well, and that could be the valuable, if we could move towards this regional entity, that analysis is critical, because most of the projects that, not all, but many of the projects that the county is funding, the city is also funding. And so there's a impact from all those funds that, you know, whether it's a homeless outreach strategy or it's a, you know, wraparound service strategy for women and children or what have you, you know, I see that there's value in having a regional entity that can look at the data across all of these funding streams, because probably the city's looking at that same data. So we're kind of duplicating a lot, you know, of the having a couple data analysts in this new regional entity would really be critical.
Yeah.
To know, are these investments reducing the unhoused population? So anyway, I'm glad you're thinking that way, because or else why are we investing these dollars? So what?
Yeah, I think that my history suggests that we spend so much time focused on selecting folks to administer programming and the monitoring and everything that goes along with that, from a staffing level, we're just trying to get across the finish line without having kind of the ongoing review and analysis along those ways. So that's something I'm really trying to.
I heard there was some sort of new either certificate program or master's program that Eastern's starting up around program. I think it's a certificate program that folks can take who maybe work in the government or nonprofit sector who are trying to actually manage the analytics. Like they're trying to understand what are the outcomes and measure those better. Someone mentioned that, maybe it was Patrick Jones, I can't remember. Somebody was mentioning there's a new program and they're encouraging people to go through it and get this certification so that we can do better in our community at measuring outcomes.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of something that like you're saying, you usually hire people that can manage the funds and manage the contracts, but maybe they don't have those data analytics skills.
Or they do, but they're just so swamped with all
Yes.
of the other work that, because I've been too many times in my career on the side with an elected saying, how do we know we're doing well? And it's just as frustrating being a staff person saying, we have the data, and it just stopped there, as it is being the elected that's saying, tell me more. So yeah, my personal experience is like, I feel that same frustration.
So one of my questions early on, even just as Empire Health was looking at their homeless items, a year and a half ago, and bringing us, was talking about data and needing millions of dollars to spend on data. And, the health district has a whole data center that really is doing a good job. And really, in my mind, I see that's where some of this should be centered, because they're trying to see what's going on health-wise, for the entire community. Dr. V has offered, and willing to have them take a look at it, because that's what they do, and see what we can do there, versus if we each one individually are getting that and we're not being efficient with it, and we're then all analyzing, I don't know, I feel like differently when we could have one group really get the data, and then we can be talking about how we want them to analyze it, because they already know how to do all that on the analytics side. And I hear part of the problem is the system itself and getting the information from the system, but then I also heard with Family Promise, Joe Adder was able to get kind of a data set and really regurgitate it. I guess I don't know what to say, really work it and come up with some of the information he was looking for. So I feel like we keep saying it's HIS, I don't know how I say,
Homeless management information.
Yes, is probably doing what we need to do. We're just not getting the data from it. We're not, scrubbing it for what our needs are. And so I feel like, rather than recreate a whole new system, it's like, should we, maybe work with the health district, since we help fund the health district, and go, how do we look at this, and what can we do, and how do we get that information? I'm just saying, these are all the different things I keep hearing in the community, is that the city isn't willing to share that information, but it's public information. And the health district is one that has, they have HIPAA constraints, and they understand that. So if it's because of HIPAA, they actually know how to do that, because that's a piece of it, I think. And so I kind of keep throwing that out there to see if people will look at that, rather than each of us getting individual employees to do this, that if we could have the health district work with us.
Under contract to do that, yeah. And they might have to hire, if over time, if they were managing that for the whole region, they might have to hire additional staff, but then it's part of
But then it
a whole
becomes
data center.
independent.
Yeah.
Then, for everybody to be able to rely on and independence of it versus each entity spitting the data how they want to.
And that's a really important part is every entity that is providing homeless services, they live by grants. And so data means everything to them. So if they can't get the data from one source, they use their own data. And then certainly when you're looking at it from a regional perspective, what do those half dozen or more different data sources, how do you even know what's truly being successful and not without that kind of regional data source? I hear you, the Spokane Regional Health District. I wrote it down, and one of my comments is, who do I need to talk with? So I'll start.
Yes, talk with Dr. V.
Okay.
And because he's who I talked to, and I know he was trying to talk to Empire Health Foundation at that time. I don't know how successful that, if those conversations went any further or not, but then he would be able to put you in charge, in with the person at the data center. Because they were definitely part of like Party Spokane, and they work with Dr. Jones as he's putting data together. And they have a whole data dashboard. I think it's accessing HMIS, and what that would look like. And again, I think, since they understand all the HIPAA requirements, they'd be a really good resource for us, so that way even, as we're looking at it, we may not have to have those issues then internally that we'd have a risk of if some of the data got out there.
Perfect.
Danielle Wren is the data, I believe the
Yeah,
manager.
I don't know her last name, but it's Danielle.
She's the current chair of Priority Spokane. Yeah, but anyway.
Thanks.
WRDN.
Chris.
Quick question
Mr.
on,
Jordan, sorry.
either way's fine, on the PowerPoint, just looking at some of the current projects, the Cheney Outreach Center, Valley Partners, SNAP, YWCA, Catholic Charities under the different funds. One thing that might be helpful as part of this conversation is to see the time frame of contracts that are currently in place, so that we can understand time horizons that those dollars are currently committed to. If people think that might be helpful. Because there was some general talk at the Spokane Unite meeting about trying to transition contracts over. I don't know if that's getting into a level of detail we may not need to address today, but just something I'm thinking about as we consider possibilities.
Yeah, great feedback. I'll provide just kind of like big picture on that. So our document recording fees projects, those generally go off the calendar year. Consolidated Homeless Grant, CDBG, Home, ESG, etc. Those generally go off the 7/1 to 6/30 program year. So
State fiscal year and the federal.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I was gonna offer that this is really great. Thank you, George. And thank you, Tessa.
Yes, thank you, Tessa.
For helping out George. And so, I would be willing, if there's another commissioner as well, to like even have maybe a further conversation with you that we could dig into more of what you were asking about, Commissioner Cuny, about if you were to do a portion of these funds or all of these funds, and move them over to the regional entity, what would be the constraints, what would be the opportunities? Because the challenge is in each of these different funding streams, you could see how a portion of it could benefit homeless reduction, but also a portion of it could benefit new housing, affordable housing development or rehab. So you don't want to take away too much from those two different opportunities. So I don't know if it would be helpful just to have two commissioners kind of dig further into this with you and look at different options and bring it back to the full commission for conversation. Like, well, if we were to take this portion and leave it here at the county, but move this to the regional entity, you know, pros, cons. I don't know. That was just a thought. Since now we have the dollar amounts and we kind of know where it's being spent, maybe we can go a level deeper and look at different options of like maybe retaining some of the CDBG and the affordable housing, but then, you know, some of these other ones go to the regional entity. So I don't know, that's just a thought.
Well, and I would say before we do that, even we've got to figure out what those sideboards are. I mean, where do we really start and stop to know for this homeless authority? So I mean, I you know, that's part of, you know, the last 15 minutes is really what's our next steps.
Because there is a meeting, I believe, scheduled Thursday, or at least it's on the calendar. I don't know
I
if
think
it's
that was a
happening
calendar
or-
invite that was sent for months in advance, but
Yeah, we need
I
to
don't
find out
think
if
that
that's
meeting is
an
actually
actual
happening.
meeting or just a leftover.
I
on
think
our
it's a
calendars.
leftover calendar invite. I don't think there is.
A remnant of.
I don't believe there is a meeting.
Remnant of many's past.
Okay.
So, because I just think until we really kind of know that overall, especially with the housing and all of that, if they're going beyond coordinating with housing and they think they're now doing the housing, which again is different than what, I just keep getting confused because it's different than what Houston did. They weren't trying to be everything. They had their, you know, they had it on the emergency sheltering side of it. So it's like from an emergency center, you know, navigation center, and then getting them into housing, but they weren't actually providing the money for future housing projects. You know, they were kind of in a clear lane, and that's where I'm just confused on this new entity as to where it starts and stops.
Well, I would
So
love
go ahead
to,
and-
yeah, I would love to know a little bit more about what Houston is doing so that we could, I never really got that clarity around, somehow they had some sort of plan and identified housing to move people into very quickly, right? So I'm not sure who was in charge of making sure, I'm not sure how they identify, you know,
I think they were
units
coordinating
and-
with another agency on that, but I don't think that was exactly what this group was doing, but they were in constant communication to see what's available, what can they get people into. All
Right.
of that, but they weren't, from what I understood, they weren't,
Money was not flowing to build
yes.
affordable housing
Didn't you say when you visited
or rehab. what
last
have you.
year, when you visited Houston,
So that's-
they were not clearing cams because they were out of vacant
Housing
units?
stock
So
at that point in time,
Like-
yes.
their method worked 3-4 years ago when there wasn't a housing crisis. Now that they're essentially where we're at, they've stopped.
Yeah, they had at that point in time.
Yeah, so.
I don't know if they've
Yeah.
redone, and they had some housing that was coming offline that they had people in that was no longer gonna be available either. I mean, because they talked about that, you know, they put too many people in one location and that wasn't working. And so that landlord was now not working with them. So it's, I mean, that's where I need to understand kind of
agree.
where our, you know, where we start and stop, because then we can identify what funds could be available, you know, for that. So Commissioner French, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I think last Wednesday or Thursday morning, I had breakfast with Teresa Sanders and shared with her kind of the general tone of our conversation and concerns of our conversation from Monday. And her response was, that's great, because all of the above applies. And that specifically to your concern, I said, you know, where are the sideboards on this? And she said, the sideboards are going to be defined by the electeds, and we will operate within those sideboards. And so that's how she characterized that. And then I also said, well, in the document that you sent over, it uses the word all way too many times. And that we have concerns because a lot of those funds have already been committed to other programs. And if we are going to shift funds, then how do we keep maintaining? And I specifically talked about mental health sales tax numbers. And she said, exactly right. We don't know, speaking for the collective, her and Rick and Gavin, we don't know what all of the contingencies, commitments, obligations, and boundaries are for each one of those funds. What we did is we collectively identified all those funds and said, these are all the funds that are available for this cause, but within that cause, we have to define. And she said, that's up to us to define. And I thought, okay, that means there's an awful lot of work to be done here. And she said, well, that's what Rick and Gavin and her have agreed to do, is go ahead and do that, help, not do that work for us, but help do that work so that we can get to a mutual understanding about what funds are available, what funds are not available, and the funds that are available, how are they going to be spent, yada, 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 yada. So anyway, I said, so where do you envision that we're going from here? And she said, because I said, you know, the amount of work we're talking about is huge. And it took us 90 days to get the agreement to do 90 days. We've only got so many years left in our life. And so she said, well, what she's hearing from the city is they are developing a letter that says, we are willing to take the next step, but it's non-binding, it's non-committal, and we're just going to explore trying to put together what does the next iteration of this look like? And I said, well, I would really love to see that letter, because at this point, we're kind of looking like all this is on our lap, and there's a lot of unanswered questions, And so somebody is supposed to be getting that letter to us, and I have not seen it. I don't know what's in it, other than Ms. Sanders referencing to it. That's the only knowledge I have of it. But there is a lot of work involved in this, and I personally don't know that I want to take the time for this board to develop that program, knowing we've got other partners that might or might not be at the table. We've got other programs that might or might not be at the table. There's just an awful lot here. And I did ask her, I said, so you, Rick, and Gavin are committing to do what? And she said, we are willing to, on a paid basis, help put all of this together for you between now and the end of the year, so that you'd be able to stand up something out the first year. And I said, so the magic question is, how much? And she said, well, I think we all three of us and everything working on this and stuff, we're probably under 100,000. And I said, well, okay, how does that then get to the board? And she said, well, let me see if I can track down the letter that the city is developing. And that's collectively the 100,000. That's all the different partners chipping in, whatever relationship that is, and chipping in. So that's where I left that conversation on, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday with her, is that what's the next step? Because it said, for us, we spent almost 2 hours last Monday and came up with more questions we had answers to, and concerns about who's doing what to who. And so anyway, that's I just took an hour breakfast, consolidated it down to 3 minutes, but that's what I know as of last week.
I would say that's interesting, because that's not the community expectation that was given, that we were supposed to have 60 days to sign that ILA. I mean, I have business leaders going to, so what do you guys, how quickly are you guys gonna get this done? And I'm like, as I was at the GSI Executive Committee meeting and said, as they talked about changing their governance structure and how long it's taken them to do that, like, over a year and still has 6 months to go. I said, this is great, because this isn't gonna happen just overnight for us. I mean, to change a governance structure and to create a new entity and to figure out what's really happening. And I had community members there that were just like, well, what do you mean? So I mean, it's a little frustrating that they've set some expectations and now this is the first I'm hearing that they're gonna come up with a letter. And the first I'm hearing that they're getting hired.
But the letter is not from the three. The letter is something, I think it's Jonathan Bingle or somebody over in the city council is putting it together. So this was the city's effort to try and move the fall forward. It wasn't the three of them. And so the letter is totally independent of the three of them. She was just updating me on what she had heard in terms of progress for the different entities. So I don't want to represent one or the other and stuff. So, and it's a willingness to work to try and get us putting it together. It's not a proposal.
My concern is, so like, this is a great presentation that George presented us with here about all these different funds, where all this different money goes. And essentially we're tasked with now being like, okay, George, which of these programs can someone else administer better than you? But from the stage of the presentation 2 weeks ago, they said, we're here to present the what, not the how. Yeah. So there's no way for us to even analyze, can somebody manage these dollars better, because they haven't said how they'd spend them. So we're comparing George's successful programs with a question mark. I mean, so it's kind of hard to, because we don't know. I mean, we could put all these dollars over to them, or to this entity. As of today, we have no idea how they're going to be spent, because that's not part of the plan yet. So it's pretty tough. I mean, George has come in here multiple times. George's predecessors have come in here multiple times over the years to show us how many people they've put in units, how they've helped all these specific people. Like, we actually have metrics that we can measure. The only thing we got was a number thrown out to the crowd of, we'll reduce homelessness by 40%, which I personally think was a number just plucked out of thin air, because again, there's no plan.
Not a strategic plan.
How?
Yeah.
And they said, we're not here to tell you the how, we're here to tell you the what. And it's like, that's a pretty big leap of faith in my mind right now. Sorry to be the negative one at the table, but
but I think whenever we formed a PDA, I can't remember like going back. I think each of those PDAs then created a strategic plan to work from, or maybe there was somewhat of a plan that they were reading off the lines, but not necessarily. U District had a lot of pre-planning, before the PDA was formed. But I mean, there's going to have to be planning, like a strategic plan by the PDA.
But
first thing.
But when we stood those up, we weren't taking funds from an existing operating economic development effort and saying, okay, no more money for you, give it here. You guys go do what they were doing, but do it better. I mean, it was, we stood up sort of something that worked in conjunction with all other economic development endeavors that continued to operate. This was there to supplement the PDA's work. So this is standing down current operations and trusting a new entity will do it better.
Well, and I did bring up, I said, here's some of the challenges. Staffing. We spent a lot of time talking about the fact that, staffing for the city, all of our, majority of our folks are unionized. Cities, all their folks are unionized. We don't know about the other. And so I said, look how long it took us to deal with that for Shrek. I mean, that alone, that one single issue took us almost a year, as I remember, to try and get seniority, benefits, the whole 9 yards clarified so we can stand it up. I said, I don't even know how many people you're talking about. but you've certainly got multiple union contracts to deal with, and that alone is gonna take time, so, and she acknowledged that, because she was part of the Shrek, standing up Shrek, she said, oh yeah, I remember all those and stuff, so, but, you know, it's,
So
there's a lot of work involved in this.
So what's the next step? I guess that's, I mean, do we,
Well-
I mean,
So from
'cause
her,
I have no idea who's hiring who. I mean, that's never been,
well, it's, so
It's
it's.
an option if we feel like we
it-
need a.
Yeah, it's an option if we want, and so it's my understanding that the three of them have agreed, the three of them have volunteered to work for the city as the staff people to put all of this together on behalf of the region, and that the different partners would be contributing for the salary through the city to compensate them for doing this work, similar to what we did with the stabilization facility and some of the other stuff. So, you know, that I didn't see, but I said, so who's leading this? And she said, well, you know, at this point, the only one that I'm aware of that's putting a letter together, and the letter is about, are you willing to take the next step? It's not a commitment letter, it's saying, okay, you know this much, do you know enough to say, are you willing to explore putting it together or not? That's the nature of it, non-committal, just saying, woo-ha-ha, yeah, we're gonna take the next step or not. So, but, I mean, I've not talked to Jonathan, I have no idea whether
we need to
he's
wait
pushing it or
for
the
that.
mayor's pushing it or who's pushing it. And now they gotta figure, I guess tonight, they're gonna figure out who the next council president is. But I don't know who's the lead on this for the city standpoint. I don't know that we wanna be the lead on it.
I mean, I guess then are we waiting till we get some further, I mean, because I mean, it's like, obviously, we can't take the lead if they're gonna be hiring
Yeah.
Gavin and Teresa. I mean, not if they're taking the lead and then expecting us to come, I mean, like, someone's gotta give us what the plan is.
What's the plan? Yeah, what's the plan, Stan? And I don't know. I didn't get that far with the conversation with Teresa. I was just trying to, one, update her on our concerns and then find out from her perspective where we go. So that,
Okay.
and what you know is what I know.
Because we've got our next speaker ready to go. I see Mike's here. So what do we want to do? And does somebody want to reach out to the city?
Well, I think we'll see a lot of people tomorrow, if anyone's going to the STA Central Line ribbon cutting. So my plan was to reach out to whoever's elected council president and see if, I was just planning to talk with some folks tomorrow and say, hey, how do you guys see this moving forward?
Yeah.
Because I see where there's value in just at least saying, hey, we want to keep talking. And maybe we need to relook at the steps and which comes first. Is it forming the structure or is it like,
Well, we have to identify what the structure is, because with all our PDAs, you know, whether broadband or Northeast or West Plains.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew specifically we had boundaries that PDA was working within. And so,
I agree, that's like the first, if the city and the county can get together on this is the boundaries, then the money and which dollars kind of would then
can start to
Would
then
be
inform on what
informed,
that business plan would look like before we develop what that structure is. Commissioner French.
Well, I'll just throw this out. I know we did this a couple times when I was on the city council. I wonder whether there's any merit to maybe having a joint meeting between us and the city council, the mayor for the city of Spokane. Just get us all in the room with their staff and just have a conversation as opposed to trying to go, he said, she said across the river. Would that maybe help, at least help mutually inform each other about what the expectations are? I don't know, throw it out for your consideration.
So would we want to do a council of governments before the fair, like we
I was
traditionally
thinking-
do?
Well, you know, maybe that
That's
might
what I
not be a
was
bad idea,
And
yeah.
it's gonna
that
take
first
us-
Friday or
take us
second
out.
Friday, whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, then people
But
can
we could
kind of
have some
come up with-
smaller group conversations and some I think it would need to be informed by having some conversations before, so that we could have a good agenda to work from that was, you know, planned out a little
I
bit.
think we'd actually want a facilitator for that. I don't think we'd want any of us trying to lead that conversation. I think we'd want a facilitator.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be one of the three.
You're right,
Because
yeah.
they're,
They're vested.
yeah, so, okay. I will look into Council of Governments the Friday before the fair.
I actually, when I was at the Fair Board meeting last week, I asked Erin, I said, oh, I wonder if we're gonna have a Council of Governments meeting, and she said, well, just let us know. So I just was thinking how we traditionally had that after that fair opening.
Help me work through that too.
But in the meantime, I think having some one-on-ones or small group conversations to really inform the agenda for that, so we can have a real productive meeting and not having to start from scratch, you know, but having it be informed a little bit on where the city is and where the county is. And in between, I would love to know more about how Houston, I think, yeah, because I agree with you. I do think that the housing development, the affordable housing development piece, and identifying units and identifying landlords and such who are where those units are and how they're available to move people into as soon as possible. How did they do that, and who managed kind of that side of it? Because without that, we're not going to be successful over time. If we're trying to emulate the Houston model, their model was move people through a welcome centers and into housing as soon as possible. But how did they identify and build up that bank of housing to move people into? And I know it's been 10 years that they've been working on it, so, but that's really important that,
Talk to Gavin, because he was
I
down
wonder
in
if the
Houston.
gal is still under contract, the one who was, helped set up that system. It might be good to get a better understanding of that before this meeting, so that we could understand what their scope was and how they framed it. Yeah, definitely needs to, if we want to follow that model, I don't know if we truly understood all that went into it.
Yeah, I think we never fully understood what the actual model was. I think it was, they were taking that as a basis, but expanding upon it. And I think, you know, still understanding, you know, and again, that was a unique situation with a very strong mayor in that area that drove it. So, you know, so, yeah, I think that would be helpful to know what that structure really looked like as we move forward.
Well, and I like your idea about hiring a facilitator. I'm just wondering, maybe in the next couple of weeks, we could each lay down as many questions as we can to get to the facilitator ahead of time, so that they know that by the end of the session, we hope to have answers to these questions, whatever they are. You know, like I said, that might help provide guidance for the facilitator, but it also help assure that we're gonna come out of it with what we want, which are answers.
And I think it's important to have it be, you know, all the electeds. So I mean,
Oh,
that's what
yeah.
the Council of Governments did at the Valley, Liberty Lake, making sure everybody's.
Especially the Fairway Heights and Medical Lake that are participating pretty actively.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we have our next step.
Before I leave, sorry, I just wanted to give you all a heads up. Our Consolidated Homeless Grant with the Washington State Department of Commerce, we expect to receive it this week. I know you all are off for a couple of weeks. Good. I'll be back August 8th to brief and hopefully consent the same day, so that we can get that contract signed, so we can get our individual contracts executed with those fund sources. So just a heads up on that.
Okay, so maybe if you have that information ahead, email it out directly to the commissioners ahead, and then brief, you know, and then, so you can like brief on Tuesday morning for Tuesday afternoon is what you're saying. Yeah, and just make sure that's in the title, so we
As soon
look
as you
at
have
it
it, you could email
specifically.
it out the week before or whatever.
Will do.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so that's gonna then take us to Mike. I may have you
You want me
move,
to go down there?
yeah, just that way you're seeing better on the screen. Do you want your computer?
I can do it off of that.
Okay.
Yeah, Ron will bring it up. Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
We're back for the third and probably not the final part of our presentation about the Measure One project. We started off with kind of the forecast, showing out what the jail size would be and informing you on the numbers. And then secondly, we came back, we talked about the programs, some of the programs we are looking forward to and some of the ones we want to craft into our overall project design. And today we'll just kind of do an overview over the project timeline along with the M&O. And then we talk about some of the education along with the Breaking Barriers program. So thank you, that helps. Next slide, please. So, and I'm sure all of you have a copy of this, I hope. So if you look at the project timeline, you can see that we've got several initiatives underway along with the, it says data team, but this is kind of data / our project team. You know, where we, of course, we work through the geo forecasting, the metrics that went along with it, working up the financials and M&O, and thank you to Randy and his team for help with that as well. And then as we talked about, we worked through the programs. If you look on the corresponding line on the right-hand side, that's kind of where we are in our efforts and where we're headed towards. On the architectural side, we began off with Integris, the kickoff, and they helped us get a 5% design, which you've all seen. And then we had to also go back to them to help us out on some materials for the educational campaign, some renderings that would be involved with the overall slides and website that we have. Working along with the conditional use permit, you can see that we went for RFP, we've done the CUP pre-development application is what we're working on presently. We have met with the city on a couple of different occasions. And then we're going to work on a determination along with the public hearing. And so we're working alongside, our consultant. He's guiding us along the way, along with Jim Amacio and some help from Scott Chesney and his group too. On the educational part of it, we are working with the PR firm. We developed a website that we're ready to launch. We're just doing some final approvals from the legal department to make sure that we're lining up with the PDC guidelines. We've also got a video that we're working on and some designs for the mailer that we intend to mail out later on in the year. And if you kind of look through our timeline, this is kind of how we plan to move it forward out to the blue boxes to the vote in November. So any questions on our timeline? It's a really an aggressive timeline. We started at the beginning of the year. We've accomplished quite a bit to date. So, no questions? All right. Next, we'll talk about the first portion of it. You have a conceptual design. The first part that you have to work through is making sure that we're matching up the posts, that we have enough staff to transfer over to staff all those positions. In working with Don Hooper and lieutenants out there, we determined that current state, we could use the amount of corrections officers that we have right now. It would be enough to staff the future jail along with the community corrections center. So we started off with 2024, which is with all the contract increases along with it. And you can see that that's the amount for 2024. In 2028, which is the opening day, we felt we would need 2 caseworkers along with 1 additional teacher. And that's why you'll see an increase in the support staff. Mental health has also had some requests for some additional staff, but we felt that we would go into the new facility with the existing staff and then kind of grow the staff off of what is informing us. So there's the budget under 2028. And then these are forecasted out with 3% growth, things that help. So for future state, you can see on the bottom also the numbers that correspond with the years. So Randy, did you want to add anything to that?
Really, yeah, we did put a 3% compounding growth multiplier on here. Let's see, so yeah, by 2053, there's really only like 4 additional people, or no, it's more than that, I can't remember how many you had, but the difference between current state and future state is only, $3.5 million, so under half, and that is with multiplication. As you can see, current in that 20-year period goes from 42 to 99. That's just basically the 3% multiplier going out that many years.
In 2024, or 2040, I'm sorry, we anticipate putting on some additional mental health staff that they had asked for. But again, we want to look at the programs, get them developed, work through some of the numbers and see how those go. And then we'll add a staff accordingly to that.
Mike, to confirm, when you say that we've looked at our existing staffing, specifically our correction officers, and believe that staffing will be sufficient for the new facilities, that's based on our budgeted staffing. Not, because we know commissioners are aware we're down anywhere between 27 to 32 on a regular basis. If we're able to bring that back up to our approved staffing level and we're fully staffed, I think that's what you mean
That's
by
right, yeah.
we feel like that will be sufficient. So this reflects salaries and benefits, assuming fully staffed.
Correct.
I just want to make sure that commissioners understood that piece.
So you're saying that no new correctional officers would be needed?
That's correct.
But, and how many, you said maybe a couple support staff, like a program
We would add,
educator?
we'd add 2 caseworkers and 1 teacher at the beginning. So the Breaking Barriers program has to be taught by a certified teacher. So we want to expand the Breaking Barriers program, which I'll talk about here in a bit, but it would require an additional teacher. And then for the caseworkers, going to an individualized case management approach would require 2 more case managers.
How many do we have right now?
Right now, we have 2.
So prior to the recession era cuts, how many case managers did we used to have?
Well, we had several, but they were called probation officers. So it's gone through a transition. Originally, we had corporals, we had some probation officers that worked in that department. They helped with the EHM program along with the caseworkers. And when that was cut, due to the budget cuts back when it occurred, all of those positions were moved out. And then the 2 new positions are caseworkers. We didn't hire back any of the former probation officers that we had. That makes sense. So the probation officers help with two parts of it. They did the EHM program and all the supervision that goes along with it. They also assisted in the programming portion of it. The probation officers in this scheming of the staffing levels were never brought back. So that was only 2 that were made that were actual caseworkers, and those are the 2 that reside today, along with 1 teacher.
Yeah, and just historically, that was when the sheriff's office was in charge of the jail. And
Correct.
I think, is it like 5 or 7 counties that the commissioners are the ones now in charge? Because when, like it was 2013 when Ozzie
12 or 13, I think.
turned it over to the commissioners. So just historically, as we're looking at some of that info.
Just to piggyback off that, I think when we went out to tour Geiger, I think I heard it was said something like we used to have like 15 case managers or something. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and then when it was under the sheriff's office, and not casting any stones, but when the budget cuts hit, it was cut the programs. So that's what I started, was cut the programs out at Geiger, and those staff went along with it. So
And did we have a higher population at Geiger at that time as well?
we did, yeah.
So that's what I was getting at. there were more case managers. Okay, but you're only proposing that we would budget 2 more.
We've restructured the way that we're doing
Okay.
breaking barriers. I talked it over with Jason Robeson, who's, Geiger director out there, and he assured me that if we add 2, we could build the programs along with 1 teacher and then inform on the needs that we need down the road.
And I do want to add, we are just talking 2028 when the building is stood up. We would have a few additional heads, 2 more case managers in 2040, a handful of mental health professionals coming on in 2040, and then 2053, we ramp up a few more mental health professionals.
Yeah, we included those, but we really want to see from 2028, the building period of it, what to inform on what we need in the future.
Yeah, I think Mike just said what I was gonna say is this is just the estimate right now projected. We believe we could add a couple more caseworkers to start to build out a more robust programs based on availability of space and individuals utilizing it. And then should we see more individuals utilizing it, more courts that are saying they're sentencing them to this, then there's an ability to expand it even more and add some more caseworkers as well. But let's start off and see what the successes are. Let's see what utilization is. We don't want to presume 20 caseworkers and only 2 classes are full at any given time. So it's just kind of let's scale it to what the utilization actually is of it.
Yeah, we want to walk and then before we start running, see
Walk them out.
exactly, yep, exactly. Any other questions on that part of it? On the next slide, please. So this is again, another, current state and future state. Covers all the, M&O, food supplies, inmate medical, utilities, Geiger lease, and so forth. And you can see that it's also built on a 3% growth annually. And you'll see that as the body, compare the bottom to the top, and you'll see that the lease falls off, but some other areas grow at 3%.
And that growth is because of population.
Right. I'm sorry, yeah, I forgot that. Questions on that? Pretty
So
straightforward.
this all assumes the population growth that you've already
Right.
shared.
Go ahead.
How did you calculate the general M&O for the new facility? What does that include?
So the general M&O, Randy can inform a lot more on that. It's the county allocates by square footage. So we had to sit down with Tessa and do a lot of, working back and forth to figure out how those allocations work out. And then Randy, do you have any?
And Tessa did most of the work, so, but it'd be your electrical, your, food and supplies, it'd be your linens, things like that. Some things are gonna go down, we're not gonna have as much transport between the 2 facilities, so that's gonna go down. So in the end, those 2 basically offset each other for the general M&O. The big area that would increase would be food and supplies and inmate medical, because that's gonna go based upon population. But the general expenses, we really don't see changing between the 2 campuses, whether we have 2 campuses or all in 1 campus. Most of the variable looks like it's gonna be in the food, the per inmate population costs as that grows.
And I can't remember what did we use to calculate the inmate medical? We used a percentage, standard percentage on all of that.
Yes.
Okay.
And you added, you did do a increase because of they have some increases in their contract. And so that was actually a little bit higher of an increase.
Yeah, because there are some escalators in there built into the contract. Any question?
Oh, so that includes looking at just the replacement costs for systems in the building, all of those things?
What do you mean?
Just, updates to HVAC systems, all of those maintenance of the building.
So it doesn't contemplate all of that.
So we did put in some costs in the future, not on the build years, but like 15, 20 years out, we started doing some replacement costs in there, yes. But what we also don't have is if you stay with the current campus in 2 locations, there's a lot of costs you would have to add to the current facility also.
Yes.
Just to confirm, Mike, so we'll just pick food supplies for an example, under the current state, that is the combined number of our jail here and Geiger, correct? Okay, just wanna make sure.
Yes, it is. Anything else? Okay, so we've had, next slide please, we've had a lot of conversations that have been centered around our programming, and I wanted to really hit on this point again. We have a very, very robust program already in place, Breaking Barriers. And it's a 8-week program, and if you look along the left-hand side, you can see the services that is offered. And these are services and programming and education we're providing right now. We've had several graduates through the program. It has a very low recidivism rate. And so, when you look at and you hear, well, we need more, drug and alcohol. Well, we have 8-week condensed program that we have at services at court. In the court, a lot of times sentences their offenders to Geiger just to take part in those programs. It has anger management. It has, the driver's license are offered, child support, payment planning, employment prep time to get ready for a job when you get out, transportation. It has all of these things built into it, along with that AGC program that we talked about earlier. So we have a very robust program in place right now. What we don't have is space. And what we don't have is opportunity to expand those services into the jail downtown as it's currently configured. This is our bread and butter. This is the programs that we're going to use moving forward. And the caseworkers that I talked about, along with the teachers, that we need to make this a more robust program. Not more offerings, because we can always maybe find some more offerings to add to the program, but to expand it inside the secure areas as well as the community corrections center. So I really wanted to give you guys an idea. We're doing a lot of good things right now out of Geiger. It's a matter of space. It's a matter of space and currently some staffing that has been our limitation. It's not for not having a good, robust program in place, because we do have a good program in place. So does anybody have any questions on that? And then one thing that I've asked Jason to do is to start inviting you to graduations. So you guys will have an opportunity to sit in on some of the graduations. And I know that Commissioner Cuny has been in a couple of those. I know Commissioner French and Josh as well. So we're gonna get those going again, so you guys can kind of meet the people, see the faces, see the accomplishments that are happening through Geiger, and then get a better sense, and then have the availability of the participants and ask them questions about how the program was and what we could do better and those type of things. So I really wanted to make you aware of that part of it and to get those invites started so that you guys can start seeing what the type of programs that we have in place right now. Yes.
So quick question, and this is probably an ignorant one at best. Are you aware, Mike, this is the program that we currently offer, and we plan to continue to offer it. Are you aware of any non-custodial programming that we can implement or that we currently have available in our community that would reduce the number of people we have to place into this jail, or that would offset the need for more bed space? Are you aware of any that significantly reduces the need for jail beds?
I know there's several programs out there, John, that they're out there, right? But they're not well coordinated and they're not pulled together. What we need to do is to coordinate those pieces, pull them together, and then look for alternatives to at the front end. Aside from the Mental Health Crisis Stabilization Center, I understand that detox is becoming a larger problem out of the public too as well. So I think those pieces need to be addressed, but I can't put a specific name on one program that works better than the other.
So we don't know how much money the county could invest to do that, or what the price tag for doing that would be.
I certainly think it'd be worth a pot looking into and establishing something around it. So.
Thank you.
And you're talking pre-diversion, pre-arrest.
Yes, or even
Pre-trial.
just pre-trial, really, more, we either book them and then the county has programs in place to release them out into the community after a booking, or again, it's something that we can divert prior to booking, but pre-trial,
Pre-trial diversion.
yeah. Are you aware of any programs
Well,
that
we have a
we can
pre-trial
invest
diversion
in
program
to?
right now,
Right.
but it's not specifically dealing with the kind of things that you're looking for here. So those have to be established.
So in of those programs though, that's all pre-adjudication, which is all voluntary, because
Right.
a judge can't require them to do it at that point in time.
And that was gonna be my follow-up point, thank you, Commissioner, is that you can't force them to go to the programs. They can either volunteer to go to them, and that's why it's so hard to get the back-end numbers on it and calculate the success of these things is because they're volunteer, they're not voluntary, so.
Commissioner Jordan.
Just looking at the timeline, going back a little bit, it says programs, and then it shows that kind of wrapping up in July. So I remember in one of your last conversations, you talked about SRLJC and having 4 focus groups meet and kind of developing a plan around programs. So does the time frame indicate that that work is done or done soon, or is it more in the preliminary phase?
The programs are applicable to this project. The SRLJC is separate and that I'm working on, but the SRLJC anticipate will work well into the next year. Like I said, there's 4 focus groups right now, and they're developing 4 different categories, which is racial equity, pretrial diversion. They're looking at therapeutic courts, and then there's one other. I recall what the other one off the top of my head. So they right now are meeting as focus groups, and they're developing what best practices would be for Spokane. They're exploring other agencies, they're looking at other programs, and they're pulling those pieces together. I've asked for them to pull it all together and then make a presentation to the SRL, the larger board, SRLJC, and then not only have that, but to have the supporting data and cost that surround it. And so once we've been informed on those, we'll have a better idea prior to coming to the Board of County Commission what the presentation is going to be. However, that's going to be ongoing work, and yes, the blue could go here and then plenty more. I think when we're setting up this night, we're talking about us getting to you with the initial programs that we have right now and getting in front of the board and talking about those programs.
So just to clarify, these are programs for folks who have been sentenced.
These are programs you could
Or
take,
who are away, or you could take them if you're awaiting trial.
if you voluntarily
Okay.
go into them, you can take them like that.
But you're not presenting today on any criminal justice reforms or pretrial programs or
No.
things that could be done to first appearance and, or, all of the book and release center and all those other pieces.
Right.
Okay.
Which I'd be happy to come back and do, but that's not a part of what I put together here.
And I guess I'm gonna clarify, so is that part of what you have the SLRJC?
Working on.
Whatever it is. Say the
And,
acronym.
to be honest, the SRLJC, I think is making good progress. John was on the meeting, the last meeting, the focus groups are meeting, which is progress over what the SRLJC was doing prior to this. And they're focused on the task, they're trying to pull together the pieces, so I anticipate that we're gonna see some good results in the future out of SRLJC.
And they're working on, because partly they were tasked too with taking the blueprint from reform and looking at those options.
So with the blueprint of reform, there were like 24, no, there's probably more than that. There were several tasks that they had outlined in it. And what I did is I took the second report, which was kind of the report card on the blueprint of reform. Took the priorities out of that, I listed them all. I sent them before the SRLJC, and I had them vote on which they thought were the most pressing or which ones we should tackle first. And so after that, it came down to about 5 groups. Like I said, I mentioned there is the diversion programs, there is I can't remember off the top of my head, racial inequity group.
Therapeutic courts.
Therapeutic courts, and there's one more that escapes me right now. The other was staffing. Everybody said we're behind staffing, we need more staffing. That's more in Ashley's arena, so I left that up to Ashley. And the other one, there was the Community Correction Center, which is addressed in the project that I'm working on right now.
When you say Ashley, you mean Ashley Callan?
Ashley Cameron,
Cameron.
yes. So, any other questions? This is just, like I said, it's just kind of an overview and update on what we're doing along with the M&L portion of it. So, and I'd be happy to come back and talk about the SRLJC and the work that we've targeted to do for that. Just not prepared with it today.
So I think it's just nice to know that those subcommittees are up and functioning and working.
Yes.
You know, and I guess on those subcommittees, do you have, is it just people from the Law and Justice Council themselves, or there are other people that are part of those committees?
So it's composed of the people that are members of the SRLJC, but they in the details that I put, I asked them to do a broader look into the community and talk to the community as well. And so I set up a set of guidelines to go with it, and it's based off the NIC's model for, councils, for government, law and justice councils. So I kind of put together some guidelines for it. There to talk about, like I said, to talk to several different groups, lots of best practices, compile the resources for it. So, and it's functioning right now. And so we meet monthly, like we just had our last meeting. We'll meet again next month as well. So, kind of, anything else on these before I move on? Okay, next slide.
Just a second, Mike, Commissioner French.
So, as has been the case with past efforts, there'll be between the primary and the general a variety of different forums that you will need speakers at. And so I know that Josh and I believe Commissioner Cooney have volunteered to be part of that speaking bureau, just to help educate the public.
I think he's gonna get to that at this.
Well, I thought he was wrapped up.
One more slide, Commissioner.
You're gonna do that? Well, step it up. I have places to go.
Hey, that's well before noon here.
I've already done one.
So
John and I, tag team.
we sat down along with Jeff McMorrison and the PR firm that we're working for. We tried to compile a list of possible speaking venues that we could go and do our education campaign. There's probably a lot more than you could add to this list, and this is not exclusive list. We have had some opportunities to talk with Scott and I to talk to City Council, along with the City of the Valley we've talked to as well. And we've also spoke to Greater Spokane Incorporated. But we're looking for your all feedback on this, on some of the groups to help inform us where best to go make these. And we're hoping that you have got some speaking engagements that we would want to, or you'd want us to participate with. But you can see the list here, and I don't know what could be added to it. You could give me suggestions to that, and we could add it on. And so what we're looking for is the best bang for our buck. It's, we want to have a grassroots enough to make sure that the public understands what we're doing, but we also want to have an opportunity to talk to, several people at a time. So I would this is more of an informational, throwing it out to you slide to see what you all think, and then to kind of bring back to what Commissioner Fritz was just talking about as well.
Well, on the neighborhood councils, I'd add community assembly. As a community assembly is where they all meet. That I'd do both, but more than happy to do that.
Okay. And then I had a question mark on September Council of Governments, but I think you guys just answered that portion of it a minute ago. If you're gonna go forward with that, or?
Yes, if we do a Council of Governments, then you can have on the agenda.
Okay.
Mike, did you already speak to BOMA, the Building Owners and Maintenance Association?
Not yet.
That might be a good one, as well as the Realtors Association. They usually pull in a couple hundred people at their monthly meetings.
Oh, wow.
Both of those groups.
Yeah. And this was not for you guys just to decide today, it's for you to look at our list and kind of have an idea and make some suggestions, so going back and forth.
So who's going to coordinate who's on first and who's on second to make sure that we don't have two people showing up for one and nobody showing up for another?
So the PR firm, along with Ken, will have a master list of
Right.
who's going where, what dates we're going to. And so I would distribute that to all of us so that we have a copy of it. And, I think unless there's three of you attend any one meeting, any of you probably can drop in on any one of the meetings or a couple of you, so. But they'll have a master list, and the PR firm is going to make contact with the entities and arrange them for each of us, so. 116 West, so.
Well, and again, and this is important for the neighborhood councils, this is about education, this is not about campaigning.
Correct.
So it's just education.
Strictly education. I've also been asked and approached by the PR firm, and this was something that Jared had done prior to this, kind of a media campaign where we'd like to tour the media through both the facilities, have an opportunity to sit down and answer questions for them. And so I would be looking to some of the fellow commissioners to be a part of that if I could too, along with Sheriff Knowles, if you could do it, so. So we're gonna set that up. Go ahead, Scott, I'm sorry.
So Mike, I believe what we're planning on, Mike, is by the next time the commissioners meet, we'll have content from our education outreach firm to be able to share back with the commissioners as to what that could look like. That'll help them start into the community outreach.
So, and I think just so people understand, because I know Sheriff Knowles has asked me questions on kind of the education campaign. Currently, we have things ready, but it's legal has it to make sure that it's meeting the criteria of being educational versus.
Legal does not have it.
The website is what you. So the website.
I haven't received it.
Oh,
I think you were out when we sent it, but Jim has it, and I want to say you're on it, but I'm sure you've got a stack of emails.
double check it. But
If not, happy to send it.
Okay.
so our website has to be, it's done, it's completed, but our website has to be vetted by legal to make sure that we're with the PDC. And then once they have done the review, we sit down, look at the remarks on both. I hope to bring it back and show you all what the website is gonna look like as well.
Because I think, the feeling is with it going in November, we're already behind.
Yeah.
So Chris, if you haven't seen it.
Checking your emails. So, any other things, Scott, that you should bring up? Or?
And I'm just gonna say, just by the way, that anytime we say legal has it, we should probably check with Chris.
Well,
Whether, because I mean, he's helping, staff, all the different groups, and so just making sure Chris is aware. So that way, 'cause there's been a couple times I've said legal has it, and Chris is like, what?
so I should say this. We said
Emailed
legal,
by-
we emailed legal on Friday with it.
Emails are the adult version of tag.
Right. That's the truth.
So, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Scott.
certainly by the next time. That's
Very true.
So my
It is
apologies,
true.
Chris.
So go ahead,
No, just
Scott.
any other groups that you think is important to have on here so that Mike and team with our third party can help to create that master list that we help with.
I think it's important for us too to circle back with the unions. We're gonna talk to the unions, get back to them to make sure that they have got the full picture. We didn't wanna give them bits and pieces of it, even though the lieutenants and the directors certainly know about it. And I'm pretty confident they would be informing the staff about what the program is doing or what the project is. We're gonna circle back and talk to the unions along with, try to set up something where they could come maybe for a town hall visit if they wanted more information so they can provide some feedback as well.
Oh, go ahead.
And I did see Jessica had sent out the police chief's discussion on crime stats and stuff for the city of Spokane. And so he actually did a nice job of speaking to the issue as well.
Will we have an information booth at the fair?
I haven't thought that far ahead. That's not bad.
It's a pretty effective way to meet a lot of people, and stuff, so, you can just take a booth, and I think we know somebody at the fair that could probably arrange that.
Give me a booth.
Get you a booth and at least be able to just distribute information.
It's about staffing that.
Yeah, it is about staff.
And how we handle that, but I certainly can provide some information out there for it, so we can do that. Anything else?
So is the PR firm going to be reaching out to the media as well? Print, electronic?
So on the media part, and this is the part that I haven't talked over with Scott yet, I know that we're getting a new communications manager, and I want to look at the strategies for that part of it, how we're going to handle that. 116 West said that they would make contact with the speaking venues and set that up for us, but they haven't said anything about the media. So Jessica has been running with the media part of it and setting that up. But I haven't had a chance to circle back with Scott on that.
Okay.
But I'll be pulling that together probably while you guys are gone for a couple of weeks. So I'll be pulling it together during that period and see what we can come up with.
Okay.
We are. I don't know if there's anything else. I think we had a hard stop, so.
New meeting,
Okay, so what does our afternoon look like, Scott?
Starting at 2, we were able to squeeze things in, not have to start early.
Okay, and then, Chris, you said you had an executive session. Is that today or tomorrow?
Mine could be, it could be either today or tomorrow.
Okay.
But certainly this week.
Okay. I know it was getting to be a pretty full schedule, so.
If this afternoon runs all the way to 5 p.m., tomorrow is an option.
Tomorrow is a fairly quick legislative agenda. No public hearings.
No public hearings, okay. And then tomorrow morning, we all have, everyone's doing the STA.
I believe that is at 10 o'clock tomorrow.
Student GSI golf tournament, since we couldn't make it work. So, yeah. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, Commissioner Walter?
Just was wondering for this afternoon with the scraps overview, what is the goal for that conversation? Are we gonna be talking about the city contract as part of that conversation?
Part of it, yep. We're gonna be talking about kind of the history of how scraps was developed, why it was developed, what their statutory responsibilities are, what the commissioners clothe them with. We're gonna talk about some of the similarities, differences between the various contracts, city of Spokane Valley, any other jurisdiction. We're gonna talk about some of the connections that we do, kind of a comparison of us versus what scraps is and what it isn't, compared to like Spokane or Humane Society. Then we'll talk about some of the outreach that we've done with those same groups and how we're handling some of the partnering efforts and stuff. So it's a
What
fairly
about
all-encompassing.
the dogs that are awaiting kind
And
of
we'll be talking about that one too,
assessment?
our next steps. Yep.
Okay, that's a lot to cover in a half an hour.
It is.
So
And
may want
we may
to-
not get through it all.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to wait 3 more weeks till the commissioners came back. So we can do a check-in, we can get through certain amounts of it, and if we're need to take more time, then we can schedule for the 8th week when you come back.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, then we will adjourn for today since there's no other business, and we will see everybody back at 2 o'clock.